This is the D6 Generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Eric Teo in the third chair.
What do you get when you combine a pen, pineapple, apple, and pen?
With contributions from Total Fangirl.
Vampires do not sparkle.
And our loyal listeners.
Crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming to the speed of an agitated electron whizzing through a furiously shaken mobile device.
What?
Today's edition is brought to you by our fine friends at Patreon, the fine ladies and gentlemen who help us keep the lights on day in and day out, no matter how not too horrible we slide away from. And today that would be Jay Likovec, Jeremy Danielson, Jeremy Dunham, Jeremy Lynn, and Jim Kalmbach. Look at that. Only one Jim on the entire list?
Woo.
Seems to me that the name Jim is vastly underrepresented among our patrons. Get going, Jims. I'm Keegley McNary, again, your host. Today our panelists are Russ, Wandering Wakelin, and Master of the Mobile Game, Eric Traveling Teo.
Okay.
Teo, let's begin. Issue number 1. In a world that is constantly getting smaller and smaller, where time seems to be going faster and faster, and more of us are traveling farther and farther for less and less time, you get the point. It's very hard to fit a board game into that schedule until now. Question. According to Popular Mechanics, what is the best board game to mobile app conversion ever? Carcassonne Russ.
I'm going to go with Small World.
Agricola Eric.
Ticket to Ride.
Galaxy Trucker!
Ooh,
They
that's a good
love
choice.
the game, the interpretation, the methods, and the juice! Issue number 2. With the ever-evolving spectrum of visual entertainment breaking the old patterns and the old processes on a more or less seasonal basis, it is often difficult, if not impossible, to keep up with what shows are new when one season ends and another begins, and who is getting renewed and who is getting fireflied. It can be a full-time job tracking all the sci-fi, fantasy, urban fantasy, near-future, and generically strange and weird shows that keep bubbling up out of the ether. Question. With no way to know for sure, how can a viewer best be prepared for what shows might intrigue them without going insane in the attempt? Westworld Wakelin.
I would say Metacritic.
Timeless Teo.
TV Guide magazine.
Wrong! The lost chapters of the D6 generation, of course!
Of course.
That was supposed to be a softball, gentlemen. Come on! Were you not just in Dunkin' Donuts a week ago?
I did not know pandering is a thing.
Issue number 3.
It is. We pander.
According to Board Game Geek, legacy games are board games that change over time based on the outcome of each game and the various choices made by players. Players will often make physical changes to the board game by marking the board cards, placing stickers over the board, as well as destroying components. The changes made in a legacy game are always permanent, so what is done cannot be undone. Question. According to Ars Technica, Pandemic Legacy was hailed as the highest-rated board game on Board Game Geek only months after its initial release. It was the best board game, but what follow-up question did the Ars Technica staff ask? Red Rubilla Russ.
How is its replayability?
Emerald E. coli Eric.
How can we sell it later on?
Man, you guys are so rough. It's a classic. It's the best. But is it fun? You can read the article for the answer. What am I, a librarian? Issue number 4. The Age of Exploration was an informal and loosely defined historical period marking the period in which extensive overseas exploration emerged as a powerful factor in European culture. Many lands previously unknown to Europeans were discovered during this period, though most were already inhabited. Question. A particularly poorly researched and written article on Wikipedia claims that global exploration began with the discoveries of Madeira and the Azores and a sea route to India by what European country? Aban ibn Rusta Ras.
I'm going to go with Spain.
Eudoxus of Sissus Eric.
I'm going Dutch.
And you would both be wrong! Portuguese! The
sorry.
Portuguese, according to this particular Wikipedia article. I guess they'd never heard of Leif Erikson or Eric the Red, or the Romans, or the Greeks, or the Phoenicians, or the Arabs, or the countless Asian explorers throughout the Pacific and beyond. Oh, well, everyone's got a bias, I guess. Well, not me. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G. Hello!
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to episode 206 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakeland.
206. 206, there's two, and then two goes into 6-3. It's very confusing. I'm Craig Gallant.
There you go.
And I'm Eric Teo.
Hey, Eric, welcome to the show. Eric, we're very excited to have Eric on the show with us here. Eric is a longtime listener, but also a passionate developer of mobile gaming. Is that fair, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
And of course, a dedicated gamer as well. And
I would call him more of a lackadaisical developer of mobile games.
no, passion. It's passion, Craig. And noted Seafall player. Is that also
Indeed.
fair, Eric?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Noted. He didn't say fan. He said player.
No. So we thought we'd have Eric on. So I've been talking a lot about Seafall. Well, first of all, I love to talk about video games. And since Rafe has been out of pocket for a long time, I haven't had a chance to do so. So by having Eric on, first we're going to talk about developing both mobile games in general, but also some of the specificity around how some of the challenges of converting board games. Specificity, yes. About converting board games, right, Eric, into mobile apps. And then also, we're going to dive into Seafall. I've been talking a lot about it. Want to give it the full review without as many spoilers as possible. Stay away from the spoilers if we can. There'll be, I'm sure, a little bit.
So what we wanted to do was go find the guy most diametrically opposed to Russ's viewpoint and see how things went.
Yes, because we haven't done that in a while.
Enter Eric.
Yes.
Stage right. So
we thought it'd be fun to have, because Seafall is kind of a controversial game, right? Very highly hyped in 2016, highly anticipated, and it has met with mixed reviews at best. Is that fair, Eric?
Yes, that's very fair, yeah. So we're going to have a spirited debate. Yes,
so I'm excited to have you on the show here to do that. And so that's very exciting. So, but first, before we get to all that, we do need to talk about some things. You know, we did manage to run into you, Eric, at Dunkin' Donuts. Now, do you remember what we discussed during the Lost Chapters there at Dunkin' Donuts, Eric?
We discussed about chocolate donuts.
We did talk
about... I believe peanut butter was mentioned as well, was it not? Or was that last time?
That was the last time.
It all just blurs together.
It is kind of, well, you know, you're doing Dunkin' Donuts once, you're in there forever. It sort of feels like it's an ongoing.
Especially that Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes.
And there was a TV showing some shows, and so we got around to talking about TV shows.
Yes, we did. We talked about mid-season TV, right here in the doldrums of winter, right? The middle of winter.
Ooh, doldrums.
Nothing exciting happening. What shows are we watching? Eric had some good ones. I had some interesting ones. Craig added no value, and so we talked about that for a while.
None whatsoever. None.
Russ is really using very complicated words today.
Well, the good news was Craig actually, though, did one of my recommendations. Craig ran out and watched.
I ran with it.
Yeah.
Ran with it indeed.
So we'll talk more about that
later on.
Yes, but Craig.
Yes.
Should listeners want to find out how to get the Lost Chapters? I bet Eric...
Excellent point, Russ. They will then listen to you tell them how to get them.
Eric,
well done.
Eric, do you know how to get the Lost Chapters?
You got to remind me again.
Okay. I tried. I did make an effort. So you go to the D6generation.com. This is why we say it every episode, people, because it is hard to remember these things.
It's hard.
You go to the D6generation.com. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little logo with Patreon on it. You click on that, and that takes you to our Patreon page. Which has a lot of alliteration on it, but also explains what the Patreon thing's all about, how you can become a supporter of the show. And if you pledge to, leave a little tip for each episode, $2 for each episode, we will give you in return, as a thank you. We will give you access.
Two or more. I don't think we need to undersell ourselves.
We will give you access to the entire library of Lost Chapters, right?
It's like Netflix for D6G. Addicts.
There you go. It's literally years of Lost Chapters recorded over
unlocked for you.
All unlocked instantly. A little half-hour sound bites you can listen to, absorb, have a little fun, a little extra D6G for supporting us. That's really how that all works. Right. So thank you to all of our patrons for doing all that.
Once again, just think about the genius of that plan. 4 hours every other week for free.
Yes.
45 minutes you got to pay for.
That's right.
I don't know why everybody. I mean, Microsoft. Imagine what Microsoft could do with that plan.
But
nobody's picked it up.
It boggles the mind.
It does.
But what's it time now for, Craig?
I think right about now it's time for Achievements in Gaming.
It is time for Achievements in Gaming. Of course, Achievements is brought to you by all of our friends at Patreon, helping us keep the lights on here by just adding a little bit to the tip bucket for every episode we produce. And we really, really appreciate that.
We do. It literally would not be happening now without you guys.
It wouldn't be.
Thank you. It wouldn't.
So
Can I
Eric.
just interject?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Please do.
I'm really surprised that the sound effect is actually playing through the headphones.
You can hear that, right? Let's try this again. Ready? Do you hear the achievement noise now, Eric? You do, don't you? See?
I heard nothing.
You didn't?
I heard nothing. You
didn't hear it that time. Well, there you go. But it is, in fact, playing.
I think he's referring to this.
Oh, the echo. Yes, the echo does come through. So Craig's echo. The achievement noise is all on my side, but Craig's echo is everywhere. It's prolific.
Amazing.
My board's better than Russ's board. Doo-dah.
Don't encourage him, Eric. You're encouraging him now.
Oh, you know, I have the power. Okay, I'm done.
See what happens? So before this gets any worse, Eric, what have you been playing lately for board games, miniature games, things like that?
So the last that I managed to play was Great Western Trail by Stronghold Games and also by Pegasus Spiel in Germany. So
games. Do we know them?
I think we know that guy.
Vaguely.
Sounds familiar.
I mean, if you had the Podfather on your show, you probably would have heard of them before.
Yes,
Podfather.
the Podfather. Yeah. So what did you think of the Great Western Trail, Eric?
It's great. Ha ha ha
ha. You thought of that all week, didn't you? You were working on that.
The best delivery of any tagline ever. I believed it. I'm sitting here believing it all.
It's great. So it is a very fun game. A lot of things to think about when you play the game. There are many paths to victory, and yeah, it is good. It is one of, I think, Alexander Pfister, the designer who also designed like Mombasa and stuff like that, has another hit on his hand. So he's a very hot designer right now.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Very cool.
Very nice. Also played Fabled Fruit, also by Stronghold Games.
And how did you like Fabled Fruit?
Oh, it is.
Did he pay you? Did Steven pay you to come? Are you like a shill? What's going on here?
Yes. For every time I say Stronghold Games, I get
he gets $1, right?
Stronghold Games. No, he hasn't paid me. So
not yet.
Wow.
He's a cagey businessman. He wouldn't pay you till after he got his money's worth.
Now, isn't Fabled Fruit trying to be the legacy game that's not Legacy?
Yeah, apparently, it is stated as the next version of Legacy, and this Fabled, I think the Fabled series will be a Legacy series that Freedom Freeze will come up with in the following years.
Okay.
So if you are not aware, Fabled Fruit is a game where it's all cards right now. There's also some bits and pieces, but it's more like player tokens and stuff like that, and you are trying to play through all the cards. The cards are all have actions, and you are using these actions as action selection. So it's an action selection game, and you're trying to buy the cards themselves in order to win the game. But you are supposed to play it over several games, and then you can keep the score throughout the games. And there's 59 different actions in all. So as you play, the board will change, and so the different actions that you can do will change as well. So different groups will have different games, but the overall narrative is roughly about the same.
So the game changes as you play it, but at the same time, none of the changes are permanent. So it's different than Legacy, right? Because you can reset to 0 again and start over if you wanted to.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's less of a. It's kind of like a campaign system, right? It's kind of a campaign system, which is interesting. I think that's a good idea, but it's not the same as the like. It's interesting, sort of branding. You know, that Podfather guy, he's got this all figured out. You know. But I'm glad you liked it. I tried it too. I thought it was a pretty good game. We had a copy floating around here for a while. It was pretty neat. Any other board games there or?
No, I think that's all so far. Cool. Yeah, it's been a busy end of the year.
Yeah, season. It's definitely been a busy start to the year here. Craig, how about yourself, sir? What have you been playing?
Let's see. I fell ill earlier this week. That really took a lot of my playtime out of my plans. But I got another game of Guild Ball in, this time against Dave's Brewers.
All right.
And it's all about the time, all about the timed game, I decided. And I know I'm not very bright. That's the thing.
Okay.
And I know that my friends play better than I do, or at a deeper level than I do, if given all the time in the world.
Right.
But what I have learned is that, generally speaking, my initial impulse, nothing better is probably going to come out of my head. And so if I go with my initial impulse and I just do a little bit of pre-planning when it's not my turn, so I know what things are happening, I can get a serious time advantage on that clock. At which point, I'm just going to start playing for when the time runs out on my opponent.
Get victory points.
All I have to do is keep you from scoring, with more than 12 minutes on the clock when your clock runs out. And actually, I've been doing extremely well with that. In fact, with Dave, I had over 20 minutes left.
Wow!
When his clock timed out, but also I had already scored 10 points. I think I scored 8 points when he timed out, and then I took out one of his models, and then the last 2 points were on the clock. But I really, really liked it.
Oh wow!
So had a lot of fun. And what did I delete?
Oh yeah, you deleted the whole modeling section from the show notes, but it's okay. Keep going. We'll figure it out.
No, I didn't. I didn't touch it.
The new hobby area rebuild.
Okay. Anyway, and then Reese and I have been playing a lot. The new hobby area rebuilt. That's not me. That's Witherspoon. That's okay.
We don't know what's going on.
Okay, I have no idea what's going on with the show notes, but I'm pretty sure I did not write Guild Ball versus Reef sort of Weatherspoon.
No.
Nor did I write Star Wars Risk with Reese Weatherspoon.
I don't know what's
Nor did I write
here.
New Hobby Area Rebuilt.
I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah,
Anyway,
neither
keep
do
going.
I know that you just blamed me for it on the show notes.
Craig,
and it wasn't me.
the show must go on. Just continue.
So
sir.
anyway,
Don't be distracted.
Reese, when he saw me getting ready to play Guild Ball with Dave, he really wanted to play. So we played. What I basically did was put out all the models, and because I was like, you really can't really play this game until you can read better than you can, buddy. And he's like, I want to see it. So I basically put the models out there, all prepped and ready to go, so that the team he had chosen, which was the Butchers, because he wanted a dog, would be able to score with one in one turn. And then I just showed him how the models work and how the scoring the kicking worked and all that stuff. So that was pretty neat. Played another game of Star Wars Risk with Reese. Oh yeah. Something is deleted. The rest of my achievement game.
See?
Anyway.
See, yes.
Yeah, it wasn't me. Oh, you are tiptoe dancing, tap dancing on my last nerve, Wakeland.
Achievement.
Yeah. Star Wars Risk with Reese. I still enjoy it. He really loves it. I got him his own little Plano.
Nice. There you go.
All the components. So he's super excited that he got his own case inside the box.
Nice.
It is. I'm starting to see the point that it is extremely difficult for the Empire to win. The Empire's win conditions are basically they need to wipe out all the rebels, which is a little more difficult than getting one lucky shot in on the Death Star. But I think if as the Empire, one of the earliest things you do is flood the space around the Death Star with TIE fighters and the Executor, then I think that's going to be extremely difficult to do. So. I think it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it's an uphill battle with more of a tricky strategy than the Rebels, which have a few different paths to victory, I think. And then he wanted to play X-Wing, so I pulled out all my X-Wing stuff, all my cool campaign co-op X-Wing stuff, and we played an X-Wing mission co-op mission, so
nice.
That was fun too.
Excellent.
And I don't know what I can't wait to find out which one of you has the word Weatherspoon featuring in your achievements. Russ,
right.
what have you played? Anything about Weatherspoons?
No, sadly, no games titled Weatherspoon. However, A friend of the show, Tim Colonna, introduced me to Hero Realms. Have you guys played Hero Realms at all, Eric?
No, never heard of it.
It's a deck building card game, but it's like a deck building game meets Magic the Gathering. So it handles up to 4 players or maybe 5 players, I think. And each player, you start out with a hand of cards, very similar to Dominion. And in the middle, there's a little market of things you can buy. And generally, you will buy different characters and money cards. And each round, you're basically playing cards from your hand either as money to buy things from the market or as damage to inflict to one of your opponents. It was like Magic. So I can go ahead. If I say I got 2 points of damage, I can give it to Tim. And then each of us also has a pair of cards that mark our hit points. And everybody starts out with 50. And it's player elimination, so you're trying to wipe the rest of the table out. But as you buy things from the middle and play these cards, you'll eventually get cards that stay up in front of you like sort of the monsters in Magic, where they're staying in front of you. There's certain icons that mean they defend you, which means that you can't attack the wizard or the player until you destroy those guys. And they all add abilities. So it's kind of a neat game. What's neat about it is the art's lovely and it plays super fast. And it's simple rules, easy to teach. So if you like deck building and you like sort of that sort of Magic the Gathering sort of I'm trying to kill you thing, it's pretty neat. It's a neat little game. I really enjoyed it, actually. Cool. It was super fast.
Board Game Geek says you can play one player.
Yeah.
Can you?
I haven't tried one player, but I could imagine you could if you had some kind of timer on your hit points. Like the slowly took damage or something.
Okay.
I don't know. But it was really, literally, I walked into the game store preparing to play my Seafall game. I got there 10 minutes early. My crew was supposed to arrive at, 10 minutes later. And he's like, want to try this? And I learned it, played it with 3 players, learned it, and we were done with our game in like less than 15 minutes. It was awesome. It was that fast and fun. So it was really good. Liked it a lot. And then, of course, played another game of Seafall. So had a lot of fun with that as well. But we'll talk more about that later this episode.
Yeah.
So what about modeling? What about miniature painting or anything else? Eric, anything in that front for you?
No, I don't really do modeling.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't.
Not your shtick, not your scene. No painting.
I tried previously, but yeah, I think I just never got into playing miniature games because I think the costs
they're not cheap.
Felt too prohibitive to get in.
That's the biggest problem with them. Usually the 2 reasons people stay away from them is either A, cost, or B, the idea of assembling and painting things just isn't what they're interested in doing. So, what about you, Craig? You played any or you doing any modeling or painting lately?
I have been working feverishly on the objective and terrain for the Conflict 47 game that we were going to be doing at Captain Con. Yes. That I will now be doing with the help of Rafe.
Yes.
As Russ has been pulled away by his vice presidently duties.
Yeah, unfortunately, work calls. However, yes, Mr. Granger will be there. The D6G will be still rerunning this awesome event, and Craig has amazing terrain going down. You don't want to miss this.
I've been making buildings, painting buildings. I finally have. I've always wanted to do like dirt roads, to have dirt roads to lay out on my fantasy and other tables, and I finally went online, found a bunch of tutorials, and made it out of latex caulking.
Oh, interesting.
Covered in sand and then painted. And other than the fact that I made it too thin in some places, so it split, it looks really nice. I like the way it looks. It's got like little tire or wagon tracks on it, and it's big enough that it really looks like a real scale dirt road that I can use for piratey stuff. More on that later. World War II, which is what it's going to be next Saturday. So I was very excited. That was my big project lately, was that, and the objective, which I'm not going to talk about till it is unveiled on the day of the event. And I'm sure I will get pictures of it onto the Twitter, which Russ will then retweet out to the rest of you on the 5th of February.
All right, there you go.
That's what I've been doing.
Quick question.
Yes.
Sorry, quick question. So the buildings that you create, right?
Yes.
How do you store them? I imagine that you cannot really stack them because they are fragile.
It's an excellent question. There's really no good way. I have buildings because I love urban terrain and all the different eras in which I like to game. So I have modern stuff stacked up. I've got fantasy stuff stacked up. I've got futuristic stuff stacked up. There, it's in boxes, it's in bins, it's freestanding. It depends. Right now, when I work on a major project like I am, it basically just devastates the pub where I work. And right now it's just a giant mess, and there's stuff all over the floor and boxes of stuff stacked up. And there's really no easy way to store, especially things big things like buildings. So I have bookshelves upon bookshelves. My wife is very kind, although every now and then she does make a snarky comment about the fact that I overflow every space that I'm given in the house. But currently, I think if I had to count out, I have like 3 different bookshelves that are full of terrain, everything from Wild West to far future. And then I have some shelving in the pub that I put in, and then I've got another set of shelves that I have to put in. So it's just, it is the perennial problem of terrain addicts like myself.
Wow.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will we one day see you on the TV show Hoarders?
Yes. One day you will. Gamer Hoarders.
Gamer Hoarders. That's a new series. That's a spin-off. I think we can do that.
Now, Russ, are you learning how to weather spoons? Is that what you're learning how to do?
No, I don't know where that came from. So I have no, I did not get any actual modeling done. However, I did get some work done on my new hobby area. So we've been revamping the downstairs in our house. And in the corner, kind of like Craig was talking about here, sometimes my wife also points out that my hobby area sort of expands and explodes and becomes a giant disaster area. So I've refactored the whole thing. Much more space. There's a spot for my little airbrush center now. There's a spot for my paints. It's easy to pop everything in, pop everything out. It's easy for Rose and I to paint now together. So I'm really pleased with my new highly organized hobby area, and I'm giving myself, it'll probably stay this neat and tidy for about 3 weeks, and then it'll be back to the original mess. But at the moment, it looks very lovely. I'm very pleased with it. Uh-huh. So we'll see how long that lasts. So what about other stuff? What about geeky goodness like TV shows, books, movies? Eric, you catching up on any of that stuff? Video games? What are you doing?
So in terms of like other stuff, I've been playing a lot of Overwatch.
Who isn't? How do you like Overwatch?
It's great. I think right now they're having the Chinese New Year event, so you get new skins, new victory poses and stuff like that. So, and it introduced a new map. I think I'm coming to a point where the gameplay is fine, and getting the new skins have reached, I think, a limit, a peak, because there's only so much skins you need for the different characters. There's only so much changes you want to make. But luckily, I mean, Blizzard has been quite good with introducing new maps with each new patch or new event. Mm-hmm. So with a new maps, it introduces new gameplay. Yep. And so that's been quite interesting. Yeah. So it's definitely it's much more fun if you play with like your friends together, and then you can chat on the Blizzard group chat, and then have a lot of fun. So that's Overwatch. Yep. And do any of you guys play?
Oh, I do. Yeah, my daughters are huge Overwatch fans, as am I. So we play quite a bit. In fact, I was just on last night checking out the new Chinese New Year stuff that just dropped yesterday. And,
are you on PS4 or PC?
Xbox, actually.
Xbox.
So,
okay.
So yeah, but we love it a lot, and I think my daughters love any customization and collectability, so they love all the skins. And I don't know if you noticed this, Eric, but they just dropped now too with this latest update. You can now assign multiple voice lines and multiple sprays per character.
Yeah. I was like, what?
So they're kind of like, here you go. Now you can have 4 instead of 1. So it's like, what's funny about this though is like the game is so polished you actually care about that, which is sort of hilarious. It's like I really shouldn't care that it's a new skin, but it kind of is cool. But you're right. I think the other trick that's been cool is they drop these new maps that aren't just new maps, but also new gameplay modes, right? So they've added, the latest one, the Chinese New Year event is a capture the flag one, which is they have not done in Overwatch before. They had that one crazy Halloween one, which is really, really cool, which is sort of a story built into it. So Blizzard doesn't really skimp on like the decorating of the levels and all the holiday theming, and the skins are more than just color changes too. They actually add like whole new essentially sculpts to the character, if you will. So I think
the voice lines and
the voice lines. I mean, they don't skimp. I think it's cool. I one wish for Overwatch, I wish they would take all those great CGI movies that have some of the story in it and sort of inject them back into the game, so I don't have to go to YouTube to watch them. Like I would wish when I loaded Overwatch, instead of always showing the Winston scene, wouldn't it be cool if it rotated through the various story scenes? I don't know.
in your 2017 prediction, you could have said that there was going to be an Overwatch movie.
Oh, you think there will be, though? Because they kind of didn't do very well with the Warcraft movie, did they?
Yeah.
I feel like Blizzard wouldn't do that again. Maybe they would.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe they do a full animation. That would be different.
I just think they should stick with the game. I mean, do you need a movie? Just sell it online. I mean, they make more money in these games anyway. Just, I think
That's
people
true.
would pay $1 to watch an Overwatch, 20-minute Overwatch show. Make a series, right? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing I played was Astronaut.
Oh, how do you like that? I saw that. I saw that on Steam. I haven't tried it. What do you think?
Yeah. So the game is it's a bit like Minecraft, but instead of like cubes, it's now polygons, and you are kind of roaming around, digging, reforming the earth, and trying to find things and build your base station in a way.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be able to play with other players, but I haven't found out how. It's kind of strange because I thought you can play other players, but when I go onto the planet, it's usually all by myself. Anyway, but the gameplay itself is pretty simple right now. It's quite basic. I think it's pre-release, so there should be a lot more content coming in later on.
Yeah.
So right now it's pretty basic. I would say that if it's not urgent and you have a lot of other games to play, you don't need to get it right now.
Right.
You could probably wait for it later on when it's a bit more fully developed. But so far it's quite fun. I mean, there's a lot of things to explore. A lot of funny looking plants, and the digging and the reforming is pretty fun. It's like Minecraft. When I play Minecraft, I tend to dig straight down until I hit the bedrock.
Nice.
And then find myself a way out. But in this case, the way that you kind of evaporate the ground away, and because it's polygons and not cubes, so it feels much more better.
Okay.
Yeah. So so that's Astronaut.
What are your feelings on like getting early access to games like this? Like I have mixed feelings because I try not to do them because I almost like want to see it when it's done, and I feel like either I'll get a negative impression or I'll get tired of it. I don't find that I come back to them if I get into them and they're not quite finished, or there's a little bit getting dull because they haven't done enough content for them. I find I get bored and don't come back. Do you find that, or do you come back over and over again until the game's finished and keep playing it?
Yeah, right now most of the time I don't really get into early access as well because like there's a lot of games to play already, so you don't really need new games to jump into.
Right.
But they have gotten into the habit of like a bit like Kickstarters. If you kickstart, then you get all these freebies and stuff like that, and then so that is a good way to like get me interested in the game, because like if you join now, you get cheaper, 10% cheaper than the retail price when you release, or you get different skins and stuff like that. So yeah, so those things may get me interested to try it out, but more often than not, I will wait and see and maybe ask my friends who have already played it and stuff like that. For Astronaut, I was kind of interested in it. Seen the video reviews about it, and it was on a Steam sale, so I decided to jump in and take a look.
Cool. All right. Excellent. Anything else on your list here?
I've been loving Supergirl. Yep. So I think when they did the Supergirl and Flash crossover, I don't think it's a spoiler by now, right?
Right. No. No, it's not a spoiler. But did you see the ones where they did a couple of crossovers? They had a couple of one-off crossovers between Supergirl and Flash, but then they had that sort of giant mashup where they combined all 4 shows, right? They had Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, and Legends of Tomorrow. Did you see that one?
Oh, I haven't watched that yet. Is that on the Supergirl episodes, or is it?
It's on. It was actually its own. I think there was one episode on each show.
Oh,
so to see the full story arc, you had to watch all 4 shows. But what I do is I buy it from Xbox, so I just watch them on Xbox. But you can also get them on iTunes or whatever your favorite service is. So I bought, and they had a separate season just for those 4 shows. You kind of buy it for like $5.
Separate season, okay.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I don't know. I don't really know exactly how they aired it, but the way they were titled, it was like they had each show. So it was like Arrow, and then it had the subtitle, and then it was Flash. And so it was kind of weird how they did it. So my assumption is they had it was like literally a crossover. So 1 week on every show, an episode appeared. That's what I think.
Oh, all right. So so because of that, I started to watch Flash again.
Yeah.
Started to watch Flash just to see how it's like.
Yep.
And it feels very much like Supergirl. Like Supergirl is like the way they start the show and the way they talk like, oh, my name is Cal Ozeral and I'm
Right.
blah, blah, blah. It's very similar.
Yeah, they're both kind of light. They don't take themselves as serious. Like Arrow's a little more serious, but Flash and Supergirl are very. They know they're from comic books. You know, it kind of, I guess, is the best way to say
Correct,
it.
yeah. So I'm eager to see, because I think this season of Supergirl, there's the musical episode
Yep.
that's coming up with Supergirl and the Flash. So I'm very interested to see that.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember the last musical episode was, I think, Hercules, long time ago.
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
sure what it- yeah.
Oh, Hercules that long ago? No, there were.
No, how about
Since
what's
then, Buffy did
What's
one.
that musical?
Dr. Horrible was a thing, and then of course,
No, but what that show that you hated after watching like 1/10 of one episode? That every
Gallant.
year. What's that?
Gallant.
Yeah, something.
Gallivant.
I think it's Gallant.
Gallivant. That's it.
Gallivant.
Yes, that's the one.
Yep.
Yes, the one. The show's so memorable we can remember the name.
Hey now,
Are you still watching it? Did you watch season 2?
season 2 was last year.
Did you watch season 3?
I do not believe there will be a season 3.
I rest my case, Your
Oh,
Honor.
he's so clever, that Russell.
All right. Hey, I will give him credit for making 2 seasons. I did not think there would be 2, so I give him props for that.
Yeah. But so that's my others.
Excellent. What about you, Craig? How's your other list doing?
I went and saw Underworld.
What'd you
Did I
think?
already talk about that? I don't
No.
think so. If you like Underworld, it's like Underworld 8 or 9 now.
Yes,
Can't
we're on
remember.
Underworld a gajillion. I tried to get back into
Yeah.
Underworld with the kids, and they just didn't like it.
No, I'm not a big fan either, but I had the opportunity to go to the movies. Actually, what happened was when I went and saw Passengers, I was late and I missed the first 5 minutes of the movie. And in the credits, it gives a lot of credit to people who are really only in the last 30 seconds of the movie. So I thought, oh my God, they must have a huge scene in the first 5 minutes that I missed. What might that change the perspective of the whole movie? So I had to figure out a movie that started around 15 minutes after Passengers started. And that gave me a few different options. Unfortunately, most of those options have been nominated for the best picture, which means they probably stink. And Karen will be mad with me if I go without her. So Underworld was the only option I had to as a movie that would start 15 minutes later. So I made it, and this is very funny because I don't do this sort of thing. Like you pay for a movie and go in a different movie or anything like that.
Yeah,
I get very uncomfortable even thinking about it. So I did it, and I snuck into, and this theater, the local theater, is very clever. They don't tell you what movie is in what theater. It's on your ticket, and that's the only place in the entire theater where it says. So I went into the theater where Passengers was playing last week, sat through the previews, which were all sci-fi. I thought, awesome, I'm in the right place. And then immediately saw A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away.
Rogue One.
Oh, crap! So I ran, and then as I run out into the hallway, go, oh my God, what am I going to duck my head into every theater? So luckily, the very next theater I ducked my head into was the right one. And so I missed, I think, 30 seconds now. But there wasn't anything super key. So if you missed the first 5 minutes of Passengers, you didn't miss anything that changed the movie. But it is some amazingly awesome special effects. So I'll say that. And then as soon as I got to the point where I had entered on my first viewing, I reluctantly, because I knew it wouldn't be as good a movie as Passengers, but I didn't want to see Passengers again. So, it's no, Guardians of the Galaxy or Star Wars movie or anything like that. Although I loved it, don't get me wrong. So I went and saw Underworld, and it was, like I say, if you liked all the movies that came before it, you're going to like this one. If you didn't like any of those movies, you're not going to like this one because it's exactly the same kind of movie. And there's a couple parts where your head kind of tilts sideways as if you were a dog that just got told a really good joke. Otherwise, not much. What am I listening to? I'm listening to Babylon's Ashes by James S.A. Corey.
Is it the next Expanse one?
Did not know the next Expanse book was out, and yet there it is, and it is awesome.
Good? Oh, good.
I'm loving it, and I love the fact that they're pumping these out
Yeah.
Like, this is the way you can write. I know that you can write this fast. So these guys are awesome. Going back to Monstrous Regiment by Terry Pratchett, reading the book. It's hard for me to read a book because usually I'm reading rule books when I'm actually reading. And so I listen to fiction, but I'm trying to finish Monstrous Regiment because it's fun. Based on Russ's recommendations a couple episodes ago, I finally did find and watched all of Con Man.
Yes. And did you like it?
And it was awesome. I think Russ undersells it, actually. Good. It's got so many cameos. Pretty much if you've ever been in a sci-fi TV show, you're somewhere in this little series. It is extremely annoying. It was a GoFundMe as opposed to Kickstarter. I would have known about it earlier. And that's how they funded the first one. It's extremely annoying, I think, to try to find it. There's 13 episodes. You can find some here, some there.
Yeah,
Amazon's got some. This place has got some. I think ultimately I went to some new service that had all 13 for $10, which is not that bad. There's 13 episodes. Most of them are between 10 and 15 minutes long. So when you're watching the show, though, it is annoying that you have to listen to the opening credits and the closing credits unless you're fast forwarding like every 10 minutes. So that can get on your nerves. Other than that, though, it's awesome. It's hilarious. The entire... I think there's only one main character from... Oh, and he passed away. So, okay. So all of the surviving main characters from Firefly are on there somewhere. Some of them with bigger parts, some of them with smaller parts. Casper Van Dien is my favorite recurring character. I'm just going to give this one little spoiler. He's basically the bartender in every place Ray Nearly, the main character, goes in every part of the country. He just happens to be the bartender. It's just awesome. It was hilarious. I loved it. Again, on Russ's recommendation, in the last chapter, I watched the Netflix original Travelers, which is kind of like Continuum. Reminded me a lot of the first couple of seasons of Continuum, but I think with a tighter plot. Really, really loved it. It was awesome. And after so many people telling me that I needed to watch Black Mirror, I finally went and watched season 1, episode 1, and no thanks.
Yeah.
And that's
I don't think you should start with season 1, episode 1. You should start with season 3, episode 1.
Now, see, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Because you know what? They shouldn't have made that season 1, episode 1 then. Because forevermore, people like me are going to watch that first and go, yep, don't need to waste any more time on that. Especially not when I have Vikings piling up on my DVR.
Oh, yes.
The Vikings season is just getting better and better right now. It's crazy good. And then last but not least, my Blood and Plunder Kickstarter package arrived. And I have to say, of all of the Kickstarters I have done most recently, this one has me fired up as soon as it landed on my doorstep. So super excited, piratey goodness. Joe went in with me, so we got 3 giant resin ships to go with the 2 ships I already had, so 5 giant resin ships, a lot of longboats, over 100 models, so we're going to get some real piratey goodness in soon. Can't wait for it. And lest I continue to be mocked on Twitter, what I said in the predictions episode was that in 2017, there would not be a major game that I went into all the way that I didn't know about in 2016. Just going to put that out. Okay? Yes, I have an addiction, but like every time a game that I ordered or knew about in 2016 lands on my doorstep, I will not be mocked. I will not be mocked. Well, I will, because I just can't stop you people. But I'm just saying. Just saying. That's all. That's me. What about you, Russ?
All right.
About weathering spoons or weathering heights?
I don't know where this comes
spoon
from.
heights? I don't know.
All right. So, first of all, I'm also listening to audiobooks. I am now in book 3 of the Pillars of Reality series by Jack Campbell.
Russ, if somebody's listening and thinks, oh, wow, these Audible books, what are they? I've never heard of them before.
What you want to do then you can...
I have rock dust in my hair from staying under rocks all this time.
You can get a free audiobook and support the show by going to the D6generation.com, clicking on the Audible logo in the right-hand corner, and that will take you to audible.com, where they will be happy to give you a free credit for a free audiobook that you get to keep, even if you decide not to use the service. But you probably will. Craig and I have been members forever. I've been a member since 2000. I have over 300 books on Audible in my library. They are yours forever. Yep. You can download them anytime on your mobile device and listen to them. They're a great way to pass the time, whether you're painting or mowing the lawn or on an airplane or whatever, driving your car. You can blast through. Great way to get through books. I'm listening right now to Pillars of Reality, which is, again, this book. It's the third book now. It's The Assassins of Altis is the book I'm listening to. And this is the cool story I was mentioning before that my oldest daughter is also really into it now, where it follows the adventures of a mage and a mechanic. And it's in sort of a fantasy world with a little bit of technology in it, sort of like if you think a little bit about War Machine, where there's guns and magic, but it's not like War Machine, but that part of it's the same. But there's these interesting guilds that don't like each other, but they're vying for control. And then you have this sort of situation where these two people are realizing that everything they've been taught is a lie and the world's not what you think it is. It's really pretty interesting stuff. Definitely designed for teenage readers, but I'm still really enjoying it. As Craig mentioned, I'm still enjoying Travelers. I'm about Craig blasted through the whole season. I'm only halfway through it, so Craig's ahead of me now.
Yeah. Well, I got sick. And still kind of sick. But I got sick, and I had a snow day because it's the end of the semester, so I can't take any time off. But then there was a snow day, and so I did binge watch.
Yeah. So in other TV news, I'm enjoying. I started watching Grimm with the family. So my daughters really like sort of this whole alternate spins on fairy tales, and we got out of Once Upon a Time because it just got too I don't know, repetitive, boring. I don't know. We just got tired of it. But then I realized, oh my God, Grimm. Nicole and I watched the first season of Grimm and then got distracted from some other show, but had fond memories of it. And it's perfect for our daughters now at this age. We started watching Grimm. We're really enjoying it. We're about halfway through season 1 now. Really enjoying that. And I know they're in the season like 5 now. And I think it's probably the last season or whatever, but it's been around a while. So there's plenty to watch there. Also been watching The Grand Tour, which again is the new version of the boys from Top Gear, who have since left the BBC and now are recording for Amazon Prime Video. And it's a fantastic show. I think I mentioned it before. Really enjoying that. And the final show I'm watching is, for all you nerds out there who enjoy Mythbusters, you should definitely watch The White Rabbit Project, which actually takes all the myth turns from Mythbusters and gives them their own series, which is sort of like a twist on Mythbusters, where instead of busting myths, they look at different topics and try to figure out which is the closest technology to bringing that topic to life. So they picked superpowers once and then said, are there any superpowers that are near reality, like invisibility or flight or, exos, like Iron Man type suits? And they kind of examined them. It's pretty neat. So it's a neat show. So did that. Also, Eric, so you mentioned Overwatch. Have you been playing Star Wars Battlefield?
No, I tried the demo when it was on PS4.
Yeah. So they've been keeping it up going. So kind of like Blizzard, they've been adding to it. And what they recently released, and I think Overwatch is influencing it a little bit, because they recently released a really cool add-on that adds, they had, of course, some events from Rogue One, which is pretty cool. But now they've also added a Death Star series of events, and it's pretty cool. So because what's cool about Star Wars Battlefront is you can be in a starfighter and you can also be on the ground fighting. And so what they've done now is they've got these series of games you play in that are sequential, depending on how you do. So, and they kind of had an alternate history twist on the Death Star assault. So in this particular version, first of all, you're trying to get to the Death Star. So it's almost like, imagine that the Luke and Han Solo and Leia failed to get R2-D2 off the Death Star. So the rebels know R2-D2's on the Death Star somehow, and they need to get him off. So they decide to do an assault on the Death Star. So first they got to get through 2 Star Destroyers that are sort of near it. So you have this assault on the Star Destroyers, you fly in Y-Wings and X-Wings, take out the shield generators, break through there. If you fail, the game ends. If you succeed, then the next game starts, where there's a little cutscene of the rebels getting a transport into one of the docking bays of the Death Star, and then you do a ground assault against the Death Star. You fight your way through the Death Star. Meanwhile, other players are playing as the Imperials and Stormtroopers running on the Death Star. And you try to find R2-D2, and if you can find R2-D2, it's exactly like a escort mission in Overwatch, where R2, as long as you're near R2, he moves forward, and if you get away from him, he stops. So it's very much a payload mission. You get R2 to the exit, you blast. If you fail this, it ends. But if you succeed, then the transport blasts away with R2-D2, and now you have the trench run scene against the Death Star because you've escaped with R2 and he's revealed the plans and you know what you got to do. So now you do the full trench run where you're flying X-Wings or Y-Wings, and the Millennium Falcon shows up from time to time, and you fight your way to the trench and try to take up the Star. So pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. And it's neat to see elements of like Overwatch sort of sneaking back into these other games. So I thought that was, because I had not seen sort of that take on the payload escort until really Overwatch made it popular. So it's neat to see that coming back.
Okay.
Also, just want to remind everybody, I am on a PAX East panel. So if you happen to be in Boston during PAX East, please come by our panel on that Friday. And I'm there with Tom Vassell and a whole bunch of other Chris and Matt Morgan and Nate Anderson and Eric Martin, and all these people that we're going to be talking about the art of choosing a board game. So if you're interested in board gaming and choosing those things or just want to say hi, please stop by that.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Great. Excellent. Well,
Oh,
look forward to
cool.
seeing you,
Look at
Eric.
that.
Definitely say hi then. And finally, Eric, I don't know if I mentioned, I knew you're a PS4 guy. So for Christmas, my daughters received a PS4, which means I had to get a little bit of Uncharted because I've always wanted to try Uncharted. I'm a big fan of those sort of like, Tomb Raider. I'm a big Lara Croft fan and Tomb Raider fan and Indiana Jones fan. So Uncharted had to be played. So I'm playing through the Uncharted collection. They released a new version of it. And I'm on Uncharted 3 right now, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm looking forward to getting through Uncharted 3 and then trying out Uncharted 4. So I have to say the game is definitely living up to the hype of all these years and never being able to try it. It stands up, too, because Uncharted 1 and 2, they're pretty old, like 2008, something like that. And yet it still stands up great. I know they've cleaned it up and made it pretty. But, essentially the polygon count's the same and the voice acting, everything's the same. And it's good. It's still a lot of fun to play. So, phew, I think that is achievements. Craig, is that achievements?
I'm checking. I don't see any weather spoons. I guess that's achievements.
Eric, do we miss any Weatherspoons on your stuff?
No, I was actually typing with a spoon.
Okay, Witherspoon. Got it. Just making sure.
Okay.
All right.
See,
that's achievements.
it wasn't Russ. And Russ let us think all along, knowing it was Russ.
Always take one for the guest, Craig. Always take one.
It's never the guest's fault, you see.
That's
No,
right.
I agree. That's what I'm saying.
All right. We'll be back with more antics right after this. And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present... Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep. Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap. Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey everyone, welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around I got sort of an interesting one. It sparked my fancy because it's sort of, backwards from everything else that's being tried with trying to marry miniature games to video games. So we've seen a lot of these attempts to take miniature games and then take the physical tabletop gaming hobby and sort of add a digital component to them. We saw it with Exilus, we saw it with Gollum Arcana. But this new attempt is to do the backwards thing. Take all the fun of the miniature gaming hobby and make it entirely virtual. And this is what is being attempted by Ubisoft with the new game Might and Magic Showdown. And I checked this thing out. Now, this is an early access game available on Steam, and it's about $20 right now for early access. I'm not sure I can recommend it yet to even be spending that kind of money on it. I would definitely be in wait and see mode on this game, but I did, as a learned member of the gaming media, I felt there was a responsibility I try this out, so I did waste my 20. Well, waste is a strong word. I decided to spend the $20 on it, and it's got a lot of interesting opportunity here. So basically, the game is they make highly realistic looking virtual miniatures. Okay, so it looks like in the game you're actually at a table with paintbrushes sitting next to you and little pots of paint and maybe some dice lying around and there's bits all over the desk, and it shows your model collection. And so over time, when you play this game, you're going to collect more and more models. And these are all virtual models, but the way they've realized them and rendered them in the game, they look hyper realistic. It looks like there's an actual model that you own sitting on a table inside virtual reality in front of you. And as you get these models and you unlock more models as you play the game and get more points and unlock them, you then can paint the models, and they come gray. And you can then, of course, you can change their poses, and you can also paint them, and you can either use some predefined painting patterns, or you can get in there and really start painting like a miniature gaming painter would. And there's a lot of cool opportunity here, I think. It's really sort of interesting. You can really do some very broad strokes, figuratively and literally on the model, and just get a couple prime colors on there and go. Or you can really get in there and do shading and try to make it look really interesting and really zoom in and do any fine point you want. There is not a lot of brush adjustability in the game. There's some. You can, of course, adjust the brush thickness, and you can rotate the model as you paint it virtually. You can also get in there and actually go ahead and change the what they call the stiffness of the brush, and I've tried playing with the stiffness of the brush, and you can also mess with the opaquency of the color, and you can sort of get a dry brushing effect. Unfortunately, there's no like dry brush button, nor is there an ink button, which would be really cool if you could ink the models virtually or dry brush the models virtually. So a couple of techniques. It's interesting because the game did such a good job of some elements of painting hobby being there. It'd be really nice if they did this. And again, I should stress that it's a little more. We've seen some video games in the past where you can adjust your army colors and things like that. This is much more than that. This is actually getting in there and you want to put pink polka dots all over your guy. It feels like you're actually in a paint program, but actually working on an actual three-dimensional model. I don't know how to describe it exactly. I've never seen it done quite this way before. So it's pretty cool. A couple of downsides to it. You can tell you're going to unlock more painting colors as you play the game. So there's a small collection of paint colors in the beginning. You'll unlock more. But the weird thing is it groups your paints by ways you unlock them, not by color. So, for example, there might be a cool purple in, the rare color area. There might be a really cool color in the legendary color area. The problem is if you want to see all the purples in one spot, you can't. Nor is there an easy way to flag which colors you worked on in one particular model if you want to go back and add some more color to different parts of the model later and remember exactly which shade of your 13 purples you used on his shoulder pads last time you painted the model. So there's obviously some rooms to improve. The other thing I think that keeps the game from being amazing right now is the performance. You can clearly tell because it's an early access game, they're going to come back later and get back to the performance and make the game smoother. Right now on my mid-range gaming PC, it's very laggy. Even playing the intro movie, even just painting a model, which is not really doing a lot of fancy stuff. There's a little bit of lag as you paint with your mouse, and that's a tricky bit because you really want that fluidness of painting to be very. Because it's good enough where you really want to kind of get artistic on your model, which is interesting. Now, the gameplay is the other part that needs a little work. So the painting area is, I thought, sort of fascinating. When you actually jump into the game, it shows your model on the tabletop. You then see your opponent models on the tabletop. And as the game starts to play, your models are fully animated and they move. And it's kind of cool to see it's sort of hyper-realistic as if you're playing there. And it's kind of cool, too. It's kind of like Toy Story a little bit because while you're playing, you can zoom back and see that they're on a table in someone's room and there's posters in the background and everything else, and it feels like you're in someone's gaming hobby room with your models on the table that are coming to life in front of you. It's kind of like every miniature gamer's dream. So that part's pretty cool. The gameplay itself, though, unfortunately, needs a little more development as well. It's not it's very high level. Like you click your main model, you click the opponent you want him to attack, and he goes and attacks it. And then you can click which ability to use, and they kind of have a cooldown period, and they recycle. It feels kind of like an MMO mechanic where you click a model, and all you're doing is waiting for things to cycle on their cooldowns, and then choosing if you're going to use your heavy attack, light attack, medium attack, or a spell. It's not really like you're commanding armies. You're really commanding one hero and a few sidekicks, essentially. So I'm not, the jury's still on the gameplay, and there's not really a single player campaign yet. There's really just a tutorial mode. So, I don't know. It's got potential. It's a really interesting idea to totally virtualize the miniature gaming hobby. So I don't know. There's something here. It's kind of cool, but I'm looking forward to when it fully gets realized. And if anybody has the budget to do so, it's probably Ubisoft. So there you have it. That is Might and Magic Showdown. Probably a little too soon to have the final verdict, but if you're a hardcore miniature gamer and you don't mind spending a little bit of money to experiment, it may be worth a look. Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the App, a segment in which, hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show. Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class. Hey, welcome back. And, Dave, Craig, I'm having trouble with names lately. I think I'm getting old. I think it's a senile thing. I can't remember.
Eric's name. Maybe you just met him like a little while ago, but calling me Dave?
I don't know what happened here. Anyway,
whatever.
So, Craig, since we have Eric on the show, you might as well call JJ, Luke. Yes, exactly. So whenever we have Eric, Eric, you respond to me all the time on Twitter. Whenever I tweet about digital board games and other digital gaming, you're like, "Oh, have you checked this out? Have you seen that?" And so I know you're in the industry. So we thought it'd be great to kind of dive in with Eric a little bit here and kind of get some insight into some of the processes that go on making digital games, particularly some of the challenges.
Did you?
What's that?
You did think that, did you?
Well, no, Eric thought that.
Well, why don't you tell me who this Eric fellow is?
Well, Craig, why don't you ask Eric our classic question, the one we have to ask as we start?
I think that's a great idea.
All right.
Eric,
Yes.
Are you now, or have you ever been a gamer?
So since days of yore. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I've been
the DOY answer.
Yeah. Yeah, from young I have been. My uncle was a chess, one chess master in Singapore. So he taught me chess from a very young age. I'm not very good though. But we played a lot of games. We played like checkers, chess. We played a lot of Chinese tabletop games as well. Like there's a game called Animal Chess, and from there we moved on to, I had friends who played Talisman, and there was a Dragonlance game that you had actual dragons and you had different heights in playing and stuff like that. Yeah, so from a very young age, my parents have been big supporters of playing tabletop games until computers came along, and then computers took over everything, and then that kind of died out until recently when I started dancing salsa, and then we wanted to have a different kind of activity for all of us who dance together. And so we went to a board game cafe and we played Blockers and Settlers of Catan, and then as a lot of people say, that's history.
So this is interesting. So you're basically telling me that when you were younger, you played a lot of board games, and then when you got older, you got away from it, but then thanks to salsa dancing, you got back into board games.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
That's pretty unusual, Craig. I'm not sure we've had anyone on the show before who has quite that story to tell.
That particular trend, would seem to be the wrong way around.
Yes. Now, Eric, just to be clear, did you ever get into role playing games or anything, or was it always predominant or miniature gaming, or was it predominantly board games that really inspired you?
So interestingly, when I was younger, there were like I did own a red box D&D when we had the crayons and the dice and stuff like that. But I never got into playing it because I didn't really know anybody else who played it. And back then, when people say geeky, it was not a favorable term.
Right.
It's
the dark ages, Eric. It was the dark times. We can say it. It was a dark day.
Yeah, and I did read a lot. Like there was a Robotech RPG.
Oh yeah.
So I did read, but I never played.
Okay, interesting. So it was really predominantly board games. And was there a particular style of a board game you preferred? Was it mostly the abstract like chess, or did you get a lot into the themed, the sort of the American style as well?
Oh, I did. I think chess was the initial introduction, and then later on, when we got older, we could understand what's happening. Then my parents did buy more thematic games. I mean, we still played like Monopoly and stuff like that. Payday was one of my favorites. But I think as we grew older, we could understand what's happening. Oh, the dinosaur is eating me and stuff like that. Then we could play. We could better appreciate games like that. Yeah,
got it. Okay, very cool. And then, what attracted you to video games? What were some of your favorite classic video games that you got into?
So when computers first came about, it's like the in thing. So parents didn't want to like lose out to the rest, so they also felt that this is the next thing. That was before the tech bubble burst and stuff like that. So they wanted to get me a computer. I played like Chopper and Alley Cat and stuff like that. So those are the really old games, and then from there on, I was hooked. I mean, I'm quite a visual person, so there are fancy graphics flying around. There's Mickey Mouse on the screen waving at you and stuff like that. So that got me hooked, and I guess that's why I moved away from tabletop games, and also because of the lack of finding people to play with. And video games, you could pretty much play games all by yourself.
Right.
So yeah. So then that's how I moved away and got into video games. And yeah, so some of the older games I remember fondly. I didn't play a lot of console games. So like when I came over here, and I know that I just graduated from a game design school. So a lot of my cohorts, they like Nintendo and stuff like that. I never played Nintendo. I barely played Super Mario.
Wow.
So yeah.
So you never were a console gamer per se. It was always it sounded like Chopper Strike, some of the older PC games, and you kind of kept out there. Yeah.
I've always been a PC gamer most of the time, yeah.
And is that why you decided to go study gaming in school? Was it that you just were so passionate about video games you wanted to make your own?
Yeah, so actually I was coming into this more from a tabletop point of view, because I was thinking that I wanted to try my hand at being a game designer. I wanted to see where I can pursue my hobby more, because before I joined the school, I was very much into tabletop game and barely played video games, because I felt I really like the interactivity. You can talk people, you can see people in the eye as you beat them and stuff like that. Though that doesn't really happen very often for me, but yeah, I really like the community that has grown from meeting people like you at Gen Con and stuff like that. So when I came to the school, it was more from the tabletop point of view, and then because the school still has a very huge slant towards video games, and so that got me back into video games again. So like I started playing video games again, and my wife and my parents they were kind enough to buy me a Razer laptop for my birthday.
Nice.
So I definitely got back into like Overwatch and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So you got the state of art. Yeah. But when you went to, so was your intent always to sort of go back to learn about digital game development to bring board games back to the PC, or was it kind of a just sort of experiment in game design in general?
It's more like I wanted to try something that I really like to do before I grew too old. Back in Singapore, quite a lot of people usually do jobs that they're not very passionate about, and so day to day is like a chore. And I wanted to try something, just try something different and see what I can do with it. So at the time, game design was my passion. Mostly playing games. I did try a bit of game design, but it wasn't very successful. So I decided to come to school and see what I can do, and also to network, because a lot of master's programs is also not only just to learn stuff, but also to network with like-minded people, people in industry, and get to know more people. Yeah. So right now, like for example, right now I'm very interested in designing video games. I'm also passionate about designing tabletop games, but I think right now in terms of actually getting stuff out into the market, video games is the way to go for me.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, kudos to you for trying to pursue your passion and see if you could start, get into an industry that you're really passionate about. I think too many people think they can't do it, so they don't try. So I think that's awesome that you took the plunge there. That's great. Now, can you talk about some of your early projects? Do you what did you actually try to build and get started?
Oh, okay. So like in school, we do have a lot of projects where the end result is always a game. Right. And we have like board game design classes. We did have one class taught by Jeff Engelskeen.
You did? Cool.
Yeah, a friend of podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure.
He's okay.
Yeah, so we did design games and stuff like that. There's also video games that we design, and the end result of it is I've managed to release 2 games from that's already out on iOS. That means iTunes. Yep. One is Spin Cycle, is like a Twitch freemium game. Freemium meaning that free to play. There's ads running in the background. Yep. And another one is a premium game. So it's called Connection. So that is my thesis game, which I did with a few other of my friends.
Oh, very cool. Now, what did you learn? What were some of the biggest lessons you got from making your first couple games? What were sort of the things that worked out the way you expected, but what are some of the other big surprises you had?
So nothing you ever started off with will remain the same at the end. Right. Yeah, nothing ever. It's like when people say, you can plan all you like, but when you hit the battlefield, nothing is the same. Right. It's exactly the same. There's a lot of iterative process. I always thought that when you design a game, even for tabletop games, when you design a game, it's like all in your head. You design everything in your head, and then when you put it out, ta-da, it will work fine. It never happens that way. Right. And actually, the way we are taught is that game design is a huge iterative process. That means you keep going back again, you change a little bit here and there, you test and a lot of playtesting. Playtesting is the key to making sure that the final product is good, well tested. There's no bugs, and there's no like, tiebreaker, what happens? There's no other tiebreaker for tiebreaker. Then that kind of sucks. Yeah.
That makes sense. So, what was the reaction to your 2 games, Spin Cycle and Cognition? How did you Did they do what you expected? I mean, I know there were school projects, but still, you got them out there.
Yeah.
How did they do for you?
So I would say that Spin Cycle was a big surprise. For us, we just wanted to get something out. Like it's more like it was also like a resume kind of thing. Like we have done something is released out in the open. We did not just make like project assignments that end up nothing. So it was quite a big surprise when we got quite a lot of people playing it. It was also helpful that we got featured on iTunes. So that's always a big help for any game. Once you get featured, you can be assured that the number of people playing your game will shoot up by a lot.
Right.
Like for our case, I think it shot up like 7,000% or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like we really didn't have a lot of people playing it initially, but once we get featured, the uptick is huge.
Now, people probably will ask. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are probably aspiring game designers, and is there anything special you have to do to get featured by iTunes? Is it something that they just sort of randomly pick a favorite and you got lucky and someone at Apple really thought it was cool, or is there a process? Do you pay for it? How does that work? So it is actually a networking thing, relationship thing. You need to build a relationship with the App Store manager. Right. So and it definitely helps if you have connections, like you know people who know people, and then from there you say hi, you introduce yourself, you get them excited about your game. So there is a process. I'm pretty sure there's no paid process, as in there are people you can pay who has the network who help you to connect with people, but most of the time is you have to do it yourself. You do the legwork yourself. You try to link up with them, show them the game, and then they will see whether they're excited about it or not, and whether they want to feature you or not. So even though you have the network, you have the connections, you are communicating with the App Store manager, doesn't necessarily mean that your 100% will get featured. And there's different layers of featuring. So if you go to iTunes, you see the banner ads. So those like Pokemon Go was the big banner. Those are the main features. Then there's a secondary feature, which is like the daily games that we play, or what are we playing right now. So there's also like the best new updates. So there's different layers of being featured. So that's awesome. So Spin Cycle did a lot more than you expected. Do you want to share some numbers with how well Spin Cycle did for you? I mean, are you comfortable doing that? I don't want to put you on a spot, but
so in terms of since it's a freemium, so the money that we earn is all from ads. Right. When you see the ads running around, or after every few plays there'll be an ad running. We did not fully design it. Like if you see a lot of more modern free-to-play games, then there's like things you can buy, you can upgrade your cards and stuff like that. So in terms of what we did, we didn't fully feature it. So in terms of the earnings that we eventually got, it's not a lot. It is good enough that it is a good test for us to see what a freemium market is like, and we developed it within, I think, 3 weeks or 4 weeks, kind of thing.
Wow!
Yeah, so it was a good test of our skills.
That seems pretty fast.
Yeah, it's
really
a good
fast.
test of our skills and what we can do. But if we spent a bit more time, like for example, instead of cat and a fish, you could get a dog or a bird or something like that. Different skins, different colors, and all these are like you can buy or you can play enough to earn coins and buy them and stuff like that. Then we probably could have earned a lot more.
So what was the inspiration? So, first of all, for listeners who aren't maybe familiar with Spin Cycle, and by the way, if you want to find it, it's spin_cycle on iTunes. Yeah. What's the basic premise of the game, and what was the inspiration for the addictive aspects of the game?
So my classmate and I, my friend and I, Emma, she's from China. So she had this idea and she wanted to develop it. And so I wanted to work with her as well. So we came together, we developed it further. So she had a basic idea of something spinning and you're trying to keep, like, it's a bit like a yin yang, and you're trying to keep everything in neutral, in harmony. So then we developed it further, and the very basic premise that she originally had was already quite addictive, like trying to keep it in place. And we kind of did a study of the current trend of games, and it's usually quick to play, easy to learn, kind of a bit like board games actually. Quick to play, easy to learn, and with very cute art. And it's something that you can lose yourself and keep playing and playing and playing, and it just uses a bit of your brain power to play. So that is what we discovered that Spin Cycle had, and so we developed it. We also had a lot of advisors from our school who who gave us some comments about what they want to see, what kind of effects, what kind of polish that they want to see in the game that can help to bring it to the next level. So yeah, so in terms of like being addictive, I think right now things that are cute, really easy to pick up, very casual. Anybody can look at it, play it, and even can also put it down, but they want to come back to it and play it a bit more. So that would be the kind of formula for being addictive in a way.
Yeah. Very cool. It's a really cute game. I like it a lot. Did you guys do the art yourselves? Did you have to bring an artist in? How'd you come up with the artwork?
So Emma, by nature, is a visual artist.
Oh, cool.
A graphic artist. So she did all the art herself. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So she has gotten quite a lot of good comments about that. Yeah.
Oh, it's very
she did
cute.
The art for Cognation as well.
Yeah. My daughters love it. I showed it to them the other day, and they're like, "This is so cute." So
yeah,
definitely
it's quite crazy. If you, I mean, like every time you play it, it's like it goes by seconds.
Right.
And the high score, if you look at high score, it's like the person have literally sat there and played it for like 7 minutes straight.
Wow. Right. That's pretty impressive.
Crazy.
So that was was Spin Cycle your first, and then Cognition was your second, or vice versa?
Correct. Spin Cycle was the first one, and then Cognition was second one. Yeah.
So what was the thinking behind Cognition? When you decided to do that one? What were you gonna try to do there?
So funnily enough, Cognition started off as Pluto and Charon. So we at the time when it was like 2015, end of 2015, where we heard that Pluto was kicked out of the solar system, and we wanted to make a game about that, where Pluto was trying to do stuff so that he can be accepted back into the solar system again. Mm-hmm. And so it originally started as that. It was Pluto flinging stuff onto a planet to terraform the planet. But we did several iterations, and then we went back to the basics, as in try to find out what is really fun. And so we've discovered that this rotating around each other kind of mechanism was fun. We originally wanted to have Pluto and Charon rotating around each other and moving around. And then we did a lot more iterations, and then we came up with the story behind Cognition, which is your two cogs trying to help this person wake up because you're traveling in his dreams, and you're trying to help him to solve puzzles, reach the end of each level, and then eventually he'll wake up. So that you can see how from the original idea of Pluto, it has evolved into cogs rotating around each other.
Nice. And how did Cognition do for you guys? Was it as strong as Spin Cycle?
I would say no. It was okay. It was also featured, same as Spin Cycle. But being a premium game, it is a bit more difficult.
Right.
Yeah. Nowadays, if you see the market trend and stuff like that, freemium games, even though it's a bit like you want to earn a lot of money from the masses. So freemium games is a way to go, because a lot more people will be willing to download it, try it, play it. And sometimes they may want to spend like, I'll spend 99 cents to get a different skin, for example. Whereas premium games are a bit a different beast altogether. So your premium games nowadays, if you see like recently, the Binding of Isaac was released on iOS.
Right.
Yeah, and that's like $14.99. That's something that we have never seen before. So it'll be interesting to see how that does.
Yeah.
But if you see like Pokemon Go, today, I think, or yesterday, I just read they did a revenue of how much revenue they made in 2016, and that's like $950 million.
Right. Yeah, it did pretty well, and that's freemium, right? So that's free, and then you add on your stuff. And I guess what Mario Run came out, and it's not doing as well as Nintendo had hoped, I guess, right?
Correct. Yeah,
and that's more of a premium model, right? I guess you can play for like half a level, and then you're paying $10 or something, right?
Correct. Yeah. And they kind of the way they did freemium is kind of strange in a way. Because whereas they could have like learned from Pokemon Go,
right,
and then did it the same way. I mean, Pokemon Go is $950 million. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, that is a lot of money.
Yeah, all they had to do with Mario Run was basically say, "Oh, you finished a level. Now wait 3 hours and you can try the next level, or you can pay us $1 and play the next level now." And that would have been more of the classic freemium model, and then they would have done better there, right?
Right, or watch an ad to
play. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that seems to be the way people go. Well, that's awesome, Eric. I think it's fantastic. Now, what is your takeaway? Have you been inspired now to do more of this kind of thing, or are you like, I had my run. It's not really my cup of tea. What's your takeaway from these two initiatives?
So I would say that I'm definitely still very interested in creating games. I feel that mobile games right now, at least, is the easiest for me to create the content and then push it out into the market. It's also not difficult to push it into iTunes and get people to look at it and buy it or play it. So I'm definitely super interested. In fact, I'm so interested that I actually recently joined a company, which is a mobile games company that is making mobile games, and I'm working on a game right now that that's pretty close to releasing soon.
Ooh.
We just need to incorporate the monetization into it as well.
So you probably can't tell us anything about
So
that.
now that's your job?
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's my job. Being
There you go.
There you go. You're living the dream. Living the dream, Craig. Living the dream.
Living the dream, indeed.
So
yeah.
So now is this? Can you tell us? Not you can't tell us about the games particularly, but is this an original game, or is this what I'm trying to say, a conversion from a tabletop game to a digital game, or?
No, not yet. Yeah. So the company is currently still focusing on freemium games, the freemium game model. We do have space and interest and the curiosity to try different things later on. So, and my colleagues, my friends in the company, all do like to play tabletop games as well.
Oh, cool.
So who knows? Maybe in the future we might look into it. There might be something that we can see how it is. But I think right now, in terms of the nature that tabletop games in digital format is being sold as a premium model, I guess it will be a bit more difficult to make a living, I think, from it.
Probably because Well, let's talk about that a bit. So now that you've been in the industry, you're a man of the industry now, Eric. You're a man about town,
indeed.
And it seems like you have some cool connections. And one of the things Eric let us know was he could reach out to some folks who've done some other work. So you reached out to a couple folks. And Eric, tell us about the gentleman you reached out to right here that was working on Suburbia and Castles.
Oh, you mean that gentleman?
Yes, that gentleman.
Yeah, so I did reach out to a few companies that did digital games. Not all of them have replied back yet. I think they also need to check with their bosses what they can share. But I've managed to talk to Ted Allspark, who designed Suburbia and Castles of Mad King, Ludwig, and released those games as well.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to chat with him, to ask him some questions about the tabletop video game conversions. Like, for example, I asked him how long did the projects take, and it took pretty long. It's like 14 months for Suburbia and 16 months for Castles of Mad King Ludwig.
That's a lot of time when you compare that to your example of like Spin Cycle, which was, what did you mention it was, like 8 weeks or?
No, about 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah.
3 to 4 weeks. So 3 to 4 weeks
turnaround
versus 14 months. Go ahead.
Correct, but you have to see that it is a multiplayer game. Mine's a single player game.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And there's a lot more interaction.
It's a lot more complicated game, right? I think where I'm going with this is,
Correct.
So these board games are super complicated, right? I mean, compared to like Spin Cycle, right? They're
Correct.
very complex. Yeah. They're multiplayer. And typically, most of us, like I know personally, when I'm looking for in a digital, electronic version of a board game, I really like that pass and play element, right? I like to, Craig and I are on an airplane going to a convention. We can play, pass the phone around, play, Castles of Mad King, Ludwig, or whatever, and have a good time there. But that's a lot more work than, balancing something in a washing machine.
What did we play on the way to England? We played Rune Wars?
We played Battlelore. Battlelore, right?
Battlelore, that's what I ment.
No, Battlelore, yeah. Is Rune Wars out?
Rune Wars is getting close. No. Yes, right? It's getting close. What else did you ask Ted? I mean, I'm kind of curious about revenue on. Did he share anything with you, like, compared to the kind of numbers and downloads you got from Spin Cycle? Are these sort of comparative? So is it like, does 4 weeks worth of work get you the equivalent revenue of 14 months? You know what I mean? He couldn't go into details. I think a lot of companies are still quite protective about how many sales they make. Yeah, but he did mention that sales will never meet expectations. Even when you talk about like tabletop games, they never meet expectations. Right.
Especially when you spend so much time and so much effort into getting the games out. But he was very happy with how Castles came about because of the campaign mode that he spent time to develop.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of responses, he felt that they both done very well, not fantastic. They certainly have gotten good reviews and have pretty popular with users. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Speaking about what you were talking about, complex games, how tabletop games are complex, and Suburbia and Castles are definitely more complex than like Spin Cycle. There are one of the questions I did ask him was also about how difficult it is to convert from a tabletop to a digital format.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely it is a whole different ball game, if I can say so. Right. So, for example, like when you play tabletop games, when we talk about rules, we read the rules, we can operate the rules quite easily by ourselves. Like, okay, now Craig, roll the dice and take the dice and place them onto the blue card, but you cannot put it on the green card and stuff like that. When you try to convert that into tabletop, it is into digital format. It is quite a challenge. Yeah, because you will follow the rules. You will not break the rules usually unless you want to cheat.
Right.
Which I don't think you do that. Yeah. So you will restrict yourselves. But if the digital format doesn't have such restrictions built in, then you would think that the game is broken.
Right.
So it's a bit like, I think, Tabletopia or the Tabletop Simulator. It is like a sandbox. You have the cards there, you have dice there, but there's no rules that restrict you from doing stuff.
I remember doing that. So when some versions of Vassal, the tabletop game.
Yeah.
You can have those rules in there, but you don't have to, right? So some conversions are just all the elements of the game, the art, the cards, but there's no rules, and it does feel weird. You're right. I mean, it's the same as the tabletop, right? If I'm playing with my family at home, nothing prevents me from cheating. I just know the rules are there. But for some reason, when you're in digital world, you expect to be restricted from cheating, and so you you're kind of more apt to do things because the computer's not stopping me, even though you have to know the rules. It is weird. There is that expectation there that the computer does some of that work for you. So you're it's really hard to get away with, here's the mobile version of my game, and it doesn't do any of the rules for you. You have to know them. We expect there should be tutorials. There should be, a soundtrack. There should, we expect all this extra stuff.
Right. All the juice.
Yeah.
You expect, tabletop game, you open it and that's it. The sound effects are all from your friends who are playing. Like,
right.
Play XCOM.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right. There's an expectation in a digital version that you don't have, and I do get impressed by that. So there's a lot of conversions that add a lot of that extra, sort of, for lack of a better term, bling to it that I really do like.
Cool little flash.
Yeah, the cool juice.
I'd call it flash.
Yeah, flash, juice. I like the juice. Juice feels
I love
good.
it when you click on a unit and instead of just flashing from one point to another, either it moves or swells up and swells back down. It adds a cool. There's juice for you right there.
Yeah. See. Yeah. See. We can blame Warcraft for that.
You like it a juice.
I like the juice.
Actually, you should blame Hearthstone. You see, Hearthstone has so much juice.
We blame it on Blizzard. Blizzard is the king of juice. Seriously, there is no Blizzard game that isn't just chock full of frosty beverages. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It is. Yeah,
they really are. I mean, think about it, even like Warcraft and StarCraft. I mean, you click on the dudes to hear all the sayings, right? Like that's part, and that was back in the 90s when they started that. So
yeah. So a lot of. Yeah, not only that, we also asked Ted, what are the difficulties, and he said it's always the UI.
Yeah.
A giant game doesn't fit well on a small device, even a tablet. And nowadays, most people will play games on their iPhones, smartphones, not necessarily the iPads, but the smartphones. So you need to try to squeeze everything into that small format.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, now I think recently Suburbia is now universal. That means you can play on your iPhones now, and it is pretty small. I mean, if you have not played the game before, you will see, oh my god, there's so many texts. I need to zoom in. It's so tedious for me to zoom in, zoom out. I'll not play the game. So you need to then cater for the players that you're trying to capture. Yeah. So it's a lot of stuff you need to think about when you talk about UI and talk about what players are comfortable with. Do they hold the phones in the landscape format or the portrait format? If they hold in portrait format, how do you design the UI for it?
Right.
Yeah.
So much going on behind the scenes.
It really is. Your comment is still sticking with me about what you expect from a digital version, because it's funny because I remember when playing Waterdeep with Craig on the iPad. And there's little stuff in there, like there's little dragons and hot air balloons, little things floating around. And it is, though. It's like, oh, this feels like a good video game. Like, I remember thinking that when we're playing it. Like, oh, this is really good. They didn't just, phone it in and throw it on there. So it definitely, I think the extra investment matters, but I got to think that costs a lot more time and effort to get that stuff in there.
Correct. Right? Yeah, different expectations. Like when I say, oh, this is a video game, you immediately have a different standard of expectation of what you want to see in the video game compared to a board game.
One thing, Eric, you don't see a lot is, we see freemium all the time in most, mobile first games, right? Mm-hmm. But like board game conversions to mobile, you very rarely see freemium. They're almost always premium. And I guess it's because they know there's a big audience out there of people who bought their board game and we're ready to like, oh, I know what this is. It's Catan. I'll drop my $5, or whatever. Did Ted mention his thoughts on that? Did he try to go freemium?
So in terms of like freemium, he did say that ask him whether he considered freemium since I don't think there's any digital board game that is freemium. Ticket to Ride wasn't free, was it?
I don't think so. You can add. There's definitely there's upgrades. Like I'm trying to remember Small World too, but I think even that you pay a little bit for, and then you pay more for the expansion.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, you pay a bit more for that. Yeah. So he mentioned that he didn't really seriously consider freemium because the number of freemium games that are successful seems really low, which is true because the market is really quite saturated with freemium games. Like he talked about like Super Mario Run. He said he wasn't going to spend $10 to play the rest of the levels. Because which is weird because he's fine to spend $300 on Switch and $60 for games,
right?
But $10 seems to be a deal.
Isn't that funny? That's the expectation, though, right? I've talked about this before too. Like, if I see a game that looks really good on iOS and it's like $3, I'm like, well, $3, I'll buy that. It's less than a Starbucks, right? But like a lot of people are like, oh no, that's a lot of money. I expect to pay 99 cents or less. But you're right. We'll go out for our console or our PC and we'll drop 30, 40, 50, $60 on a game that's maybe not even half as good as the iOS version. Right.
Yeah, I think it's also it's again like the perception. Like I'm playing it on my small phone. And since it's a small phone, it probably won't take very long to develop the game, or they don't expect super high powerful high-end games, high graphics for the games. Whereas if I on my PC, since I buy super powerful video cards for it, I should play Overwatch in ultra high def and stuff like that, right? But nowadays, that's breaking the mold because a lot of smartphones are getting more and more powerful, and so the games that are being designed for it are getting more and more fancy. Like recently, Star Wars, they released a new freemium game. Have you guys tried it?
I have not. Which one? Which one?
Star Wars Force Arena.
Oh, I've not tried that. How is it?
It's like Clash of Clans, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's like Star Wars, but in the Clash of Clans universe. Yep. And then there's cards, and you can upgrade the cards, upgrade your people, and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. It's quite good graphics and stuff like that. Yeah, I think one of the other reasons why digital tabletop game producers or publishers they don't consider freemium is because maybe the actual tabletop publishers are worried that it will lower the value of the game, the cardboard game itself. Because if now I can play this for free, why would I want to pay $30 to buy the board game?
Right. That makes sense. I understand that completely. So it is.
Yeah, that's probably got to be something they always keep in mind.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else that Ted mentioned that you found surprising or interesting?
So I did ask him like what are some of the advantages of digital format versus tabletop format. So he mentioned developing the AI helped him understand the game much more better. And and it's quite interesting because AI is kind of complicated to code and to develop. Because for example, if I want to develop AI for Suburbia, whose play style should I follow? Should I follow like Russ's play style, or should I follow Craig's play style, or should I follow Ted's play style? So it is kind of interesting how he decided to go with the AI mode. I would have expected him to do something more like solo. For example, if you play Friday, which is a solo game, the game just you're fighting against the game itself, but there's no AI fighting against you in a way. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Rafe's play style would be really easy to program. You just put a D6 in there and roll it before each decision, you'd be fine. So you random play style is very easy to do. Yeah. But I can imagine that One thing I wanted to, I thought maybe Ted gave you some insight to this. It does seem to me that you could explore some cool opportunities, though, in a digital version because there's an AI, that you really couldn't. And I'm thinking of examples like the campaign mode for castles, for example, right? Galaxy Trucker has a really cool play mode. That you don't have, you couldn't do in a board game. So, did Ted mention anything like that? Or have you experienced anything like that?
The other things that digital format can be good for is like cleanup. Often end of the round, there's like, okay, now we need to do the maintenance part of end of the round, like shuffling the cards, flipping new tiles and stuff like that. So digital can do that very well. Randomness can be handled quite cleanly. Yep. Like sometimes you roll dice. No, I don't believe I'm rolling a 1 again. But if the computer is rolling for you, then you can kind of blame the computer and not yourself for rolling 1 all the time. Kind of thing. And certain features can be handled much more better. Like Hearthstone has cards now when you're playing that has a lot of randomness. Like when you play this card, randomly draw a card from somewhere else. And that means that you don't need to, if you're playing the tabletop version of it, you need to have all your stock of cards ready so you can randomly draw from them. So that will not work. But in Hearthstone, for example, in this case, it will work fine. Yeah.
Well,
I think one of the most important thing for that digital can do better than tabletop cardboard version is tutorials.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Learning to play is much better because you can't. One of my favorite things is Carcassone's a great example, right? Scoring farmers is always complicated.
Oh, yeah.
And having it automatically do that is huge. And they do a really cool job of that. In fact, that's what we were playing, Craig. We were playing Carcassonne.
That's what it was. When did we play? But we did play.
We did. I think we played Battle Lore on the Gen Con. And I think we played. That? Yeah, I can't remember. We played both.
I don't remember.
But what's cool about Carcassonne is it really shows the way it illustrates the scoring process on the digital version. You actually see like the farm area that's being scored. It counts. And the way it does it, after one play, you immediately understand how farmers work. It's very cleverly done, and no one's accidentally forgetting a rule or forgetting scoring, right? Which is
adding a few points,
right? Just shaving a point here or whatever. So that's always good. The one thing I would say most digital versions do bad is most of them don't do takebacks well. A lot of times you commit and you're done, and there's no oops, most of those games, I don't know.
Makes you a better gamer in a way.
Probably, right? Yes. Well,
the burned hand teaches best, Russ. I would say your philosophy.
That's true if I have taken my finger off and passed the phone to Craig. That's fair. But if I have tapped accidentally, you're on the airplane and you hit turbulence and you tap the wrong spot on your phone, or you're in your car and it's bouncing around a little bit, which I've done in some games, and you hit the wrong spot and now you've made a move you can't take back. That's a little different.
True.
So I would say that I would like a commit button on most games, right?
Do you think though, for tabletop digital tabletop games, do you think that is actually doing its part to attract video gamers to play? I mean, I don't have the numbers with me.
I think that's probably what the juice is all about.
Yeah.
Try to attract people who are used to that kind of flash.
I do know that when, and this is going back a little in time now, but when Dawn of War, which is obviously a PC game, but when that hit, G-Dub, Games Workshop did see an uptick in 40K interest. It did. Oh. It wasn't huge material, oh my God, change direction of the company, but there was a tie-in there, right? So I do think there is some of that. And I do also know that I have seen comments. We have a guest on the show who said I tried the game on, Waterdeep or whatever, and I went and got it, or Alien Frontiers. So there is some of that, but I think the biggest problem I think digital games have, and maybe you can shed some light on this, is I don't know that they promote themselves well outside the board game industry. I know I get excited when I'm on Board Game Geek and I see that one of my favorite board games is now mobile, because my my favorite feature of a digital board game is it's portable. So it's not that I would rather play the digital version. If Craig's over at my house and I've got friends over here, and I want to play Waterdeep, I'm going to play the physical version of Waterdeep because it's much more fun. Like you mentioned earlier, I can look my opponent in the eye, play the game. There's all the little bits. I love that. But if Craig and I are on a plane, I would love to play Waterdeep on my phone, and I love the fact that I can have 16 board games in my pocket. Right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't know that non-board gamers find board game apps easily. Right? They're much more likely to find the other digital games than they are to find Carcassonne or Castles or Small World, right? I don't know that. When the iPad first came out, it was a big deal to have Small World there because no one else was making any apps. But now I think it's flooded, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's really a lot of games to choose from, and I feel that the stigma of this is a board game, I think is still there. I mean, nowadays when we see more tabletop gamers playing, they don't mind reading the rules, understanding, and playing the game. I think the casual game market is still very much like, I just want something quick, easy to take my mind off the commute as I go to work, the kind of thing. Whereas if I have a digital board game, like I do have quite a lot of games on my phone, but when I do the commute and stuff like that, I tend to still go to the mobile games that are much more faster to play.
Yeah.
For example, I have Dominant Species on my iPad, and I seldom play that, even though I bought it already. But I seldom play it because it's like it is still a fair 30 to 45 minutes commitment to play it.
Right.
Finished.
Well,
even though it's on.
And then there's setup and tear down, like you mentioned earlier. Like the game's just ready to go, which is also nice, and you just
huge.
get in there.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, I think to answer your question, I think. Video gamers, pure video gamers, I don't think are still getting a lot of exposure to digital tabletop games. Yeah, but I think it is growing because I know that, at PAX and stuff like that, at these video game conventions, there's more and more tabletop games being played there.
Yeah,
right.
I think there's crossover stuff.
True.
I think it's interesting because I think what's happening is the converse definitely happens, right? Like Witcher the board game or Dark Souls the board game or that the converse or StarCraft, the board game back in the mid 2000s, like that direction happens. Video gamers do buy board games based on their video game, right?
True.
But I don't know that there's enough exposure the other way yet. But we'll see. Did Ted mention anything about how he promotes his games? How do you get the word out for your?
So he mentioned that. He mentioned that there's only so much a small publisher can do. He felt that because, for example, Castles of Mad King Ludwig was doing well in a tabletop format, and he did get some reviews of the digital game itself. But he only did some small things like Facebook ads and stuff like that. From what I understand of the market, especially for freemium games, you need to do quite a lot of legwork to get more eyeballs. In a way, it's kind of like you need to pay a bit to get more money in. So you need to invest in things like advertisements, having different ad networks pay out. A bit like how if you're doing podcasting and you're doing YouTube channels and you want to have ads running on your videos, but you want the more people to view it, to then you earn more money from it. You can also have many different ad networks running on your YouTube channel, for example, and then you'll be able to earn more money from a multitude of them rather than just one ad network. So so it's a lot of actual legwork you need to do to get your game to be visible enough so that people can see. I'm sure you have seen Arnold Schwarzenegger in Mobile Strike.
Yes, right. That's like a little celebrity endorsement to help you out there a little bit.
Yeah. That's almost like cheating when it's a game like
really
that.
It really is. They gotta have millions of dollars though to pull those kinds of tricks off.
So imagine if we had him talking about Castles of Mad King Ludwig or something like that.
Right. That's that whole you need money to make money thing.
Get to the turret. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a quick break here. We're back to talk about Seafall. Some of us like it. Some of us maybe don't.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. And our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show.
So I had a nice lazy weekend this weekend. I didn't have to run around doing a lot of stuff, which gave me a lot of time to hang out and read some books and watch some TV with the kids, which was kind of fun because we're sort of in a dearth of shows right now. Like a lot of the time we fall behind. We'll have 3 or 4 shows we're trying to catch up on. And so we watch, 2 or 3 episodes of one and then 2 and 3 episodes of the other. We try and get caught up somehow, probably because I've been home quite a bit. We're all caught up. So we ended up doing something we haven't done in a while. We started watching older shows, some that we had watched back when they first came out, but me and Russ have both kind of forgotten the storylines and didn't remember the plot lines, just the characters, and some that we started and watched a few seasons of, and then just, other shows were cooler. But the one show was the Dresden Files, which is a book series that one of my daughters is terrifically interested in. The other one could care less. So I've been watching this with her and she's loving it. But the funny thing is, this is the second series I've watched just with her. The first one was Firefly, including the movie. We watched Serenity. So she knows the whole thing. She knows how it ends. And she occasionally says, Mom, that was awesome. And I hate you. There was only one season of it. Like, it's my personal responsibility that they decided to cancel this fantabulous sci-fi show. And I keep trying to explain her that she is one of very many brown coats who cries great big tears because there's only one season of this show. So then we found Dresden Files and we're almost through it. I can't remember how many episodes there are. It's a pretty full season. So I'd say we're at least halfway through. And she says to me, so how many seasons of this are there, Mom? And I realized I did it to her again because there's only one season of the Dresden Files. And I look at her, I'm like, and she's like, no. I said, there's just one season. And she said, are you kidding me? Like, she looked at me full on like an adult. How could you do this to me? And I said, but it's a really good series and you have something around, I don't know, like 13 different books to read and you halfway through the books. So this just kind of, supplements the books. And now you can put a face to an idea of what Harry Dresden looks like and what the different beasties look like and what the different vampires and all. And she still gave me like the most horrible look. So we found another show. And this one, I'm happy to say, has like 5 seasons. And I think the final season is this year. We're watching Grimm, which Russ and I only watched maybe a season and a half. And we sort of fell out of it. And it's kind of neat because we only remember bits and pieces because it's been a few years. So there's a character we might remember or one of the creatures we might remember, but we have no idea how it all comes together. So that's been very fun. So I guess it's sort of a thought that sometimes those shows that you think you watched and you've forgotten about, or that maybe you watched and you didn't quite finish, it's great fun to watch those with your kids, even if you're watching them again, because it is also sort of neat to see them through their eyes, especially if you have like preteens, because preteens are fantastic watching people make stupid mistakes in movies and TV shows that get them killed. Like these kids in this one episode, they go down and they go down further into this warehouse and then down further into the warehouse and then down further into the warehouse. And the girl is saying, I don't know, guys, I don't think we should go all the way down into this warehouse. And then she keeps going down anyway. And I said, what do you learn from that? Both the kids, do not follow the stupid boys down into the warehouse. So I feel like by watching these old movies, I've totally won. The other one was there was a kid whose mom said, don't cut through the forest. You have to stick to the roads to come home. I know that if you cut through the forest, it's shorter, but you should always stick to the road. He cuts through the forest. He gets kidnapped by this wolf creature. And again, what did they say from this one? Always listen to your mother. So I feel like revisiting some of these old shows, not only is it fun, but it totally was a win as a parent.
Hey, welcome back, and it's time for us to talk about all of our friends over at Geek Nation Tours, Terrace and the Clan, and now he's super excited. Well, I mean, he's always super excited about every trip he goes on, and the man is traveling multiple weeks every month, but his new excitement, of course, is the Miniatures in the UK Tour 2017, which he just finished putting together and put up on the website, and man, Russ, I don't think there's any place in the UK that makes a mainstream game that he's not going.
Oh, yeah, man. If you want to go to the UK in autumn, September-ish would be the time period for this. He's hitting them all, man. Warhammer World, Warlord Games, Mantic Games, War Games Illustrated, Battlefront Miniatures, War Games Found. I mean, you name it.
And
He
they're
is
going
hitting
to
it.
each of these places, and they're spending the day to go through the facilities, see how the games are made, see their little hobby sections, play their games, meet the people who make them. I mean, this is kind of like, you go to Gen Con, you meet all these people, in a bit of a rush, in a big crowded booth. Here, you're one busload of people going to this company, and you've got their attention for the day.
Exactly right. So it's fantastic, and it's just what's really good about this. Again, you're hanging out with a bunch of like-minded geeks like yourself, all passionate about your hobby. So they're all just as excited as you to see this stuff. They're going to be able to chat with you about this. You're going to make instant friends, and it's just a great way to send. And you're being handled by folks who really know the area, know the industry, know what it takes to put a good tour together, and make sure you're going to have the time of your life. So it's really, there's no better way to see any of these great places than with Geek Nation Tours. So to find out more, head on over to geeknationtours.com.
You're listening to the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what?
Who writes these?
Welcome back, me mateys. And now it's time to go exploring with Seafall. I don't know, does that fit? I don't know.
That's pretty good. I mean, it's not just pirates, but sure, there's some out there.
I know.
For sure.
I mean, Age of Exploration. So I'm sorry, I'm still in a piratey frame of mind.
It's okay.
So anyway, so I know very little, if anything, about this game. I know that it's a legacy game.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's made by our friends at Plaid Hat Games.
It is,
published in 2016, of course.
Sure.
We all remember the fiasco of trying to get a copy at Gen Con.
Oh yeah.
And what are some other statistics, Russ?
Well, sure. Well, let's jump in here because I've played now. So before we get started, I should just say that I've played. It is a campaign game, a legacy game. We'll get more to that in a second. I played. I think we're on our 6th game now. Now, Eric, how many games have you played of Seafall?
I think about 4.
Okay.
4 or 5. Yeah, 4
Cool.
games.
So we've played enough to be dangerous, right? And we're going to talk about this here today. We're going to try not to have spoilers. If we get dangerously close to any spoilers, we will try to warn you to, fast forward 5 seconds or a minute or whatever. But
I will not allow them. I will not allow them to make spoilers.
But we won't.
There's a Godzilla.
Yeah.
There's a Godzilla in the game.
The good news is that most of the spoilers that we'll need to talk about to let you get the context of the game are implied on the board. So, we can avoid that. There's other stuff that happens that is cool too, but we'll stay away from that stuff. So just a quick overview. The game came out last year, as Craig mentioned, 2016. It came out right at Gen Con. It is a Plaid Hat game. They did, it's 3 to 5 players. You could have pre-ordered it from Plaid Hat, and like Plaid Hat often does, if you pre-order, you get an extra deal. And the deal for this was I did the pre-order and the deal where you got the money in the game is normally tokens, but if you pre-ordered it for an extra $5 or $10, you could get a little chest of tons of all the coins are metal. So you get all metallic gold, silver, and bronze coins, or I can't remember the 5, 10s, and 3s or whatever they are. But it's tons of those. Eric, did you get the cool coins?
No,
they are cool. They definitely add something to the game. According to the back of the box, the game takes about 90 to 120 minutes to play. Eric, what has been your experience on play length?
Yeah, I think it's about there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
about 2 hours, but usually under 2 hours. Some have been a little faster than that, actually. The suggested retail price is $79.99, or as Craig would say, $80. So, and then if you get the the $10 extra if you want the metal coins, I think you can still order the metal coins. I think it might be 15 now online. So, before we get on the details of this game, though, Craig,
yes,
can you give us a dramatic reading of what's sort of on the back of the box here?
The back of the box.
Yeah.
Well, it all looks like it could be all the one thing, but some of it look like it's fun, and some of it looks like it's not fun to read. So I'd say it's a 4X inspired game without player elimination. Did you already read that?
No, I did not.
Age of Sail.
Go for
it. In an Age of Sail world reminiscent of our world.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
But in Seafall, the world is starting to claw its way out of a dark age and has begun to rediscover seafaring technology. Players take on the role of a mainland empire that consults with a consortium of advisors to discover new islands, explore those islands, develop trade, send out raiding parties, take part in ship-to-ship combat, and more. As in Risk Legacy and Pandemic Legacy, co-designed by Rob DeVoe, Seafall evolves as the game is played, setting their grudges into the history of the game and building a different narrative at every table as players open up the world.
There you have it. So it's a 4X Age of Sail game with the legacy spin on it, meaning the game changes permanently with every single play. In fact, even during each play.
So every person, every group who plays it, it's going to be totally different. Right?
It will be. Yeah. There will be very different elements to it. Yes, exactly.
So maybe that's why Eric doesn't like it. Maybe his group screwed it up.
Well,
it's possible. It's possible.
That's what we're going to get into because I'm curious what Eric's group did on some of these things. So let's talk about first what's in the box and kind of analyze the value here. So coming out of the box, when you open it. So Craig, what does it sound like when you open in a 4X Age of Sail game that evolves as you play it? What does that sound like?
It sounds like this.
Yeah, there's pirates in that box, apparently. We should note that there aren't any implied pirates in the very beginning of the game, but it doesn't take long before pirates to show up. So small spoiler, there are pirates.
Oh, jeez. I promise no spoilers.
You gave away the pirates already.
I am the spoiler.
Yeah.
So in it's actually subjective if you think about it, because you could play it such a way that you don't meet the pirates, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so because, well, let's get to that in a minute. We'll save that for later. Put a pin in that, Eric. Don't lose that thought. It's great. All right,
pins.
so let's talk about what's in the box here first of all. So when you open the box up, as Craig mentioned, make some cool noises. What is cool about Seafall is when you first open it up, you are impressed because not only is there a game board on it in there, but the way the little chest, there's all these little cardboard chests that are closed, and many of them are filled with goodies and sealed. So you open it up like, ooh, you're looking at immediately, essentially, what is it? I think it's like 12 chests of stuff, which is pretty neat. The game board itself is nice design. It's kind of plain, though. Is that fair, Eric? It's a pretty plain board.
Yeah.
It's not very exciting in terms of drama because most of the board is open, undiscovered sea hexes, little hexes there. There are 4, I think, known islands in the beginning. And then on the far left-hand side of the board, there's all these little ports. And each port has an icon on it that ties it back to a player icon or a faction icon, if you will. And each player is going to be assigned a faction, and they will stay with that faction throughout the campaign. So in the beginning, Eric might choose the blue faction, I might choose the red faction, and I will be that faction the entire game, and I'll be naming the faction, naming my leaders, all that stuff as I play.
Yeah. So, Russ, do you have punny names for your group?
We all went in different directions on this, which was interesting. I originally went with a very deep and meaningful name, and then kept my deep and meaningful name, but I kept adding red to it. So eventually, my land. So Red Tooth is my gamer tag, right? Red TOOF. So in the game, you actually each player gets a player mat. Also in the box is a player mat with its cardboard that's caught, and it keeps track of like what's in your base and what you build and your ship stats and everything else. So on this player mat on the back, you write the name of your land, and you write this on the front as well, the province they call it. So I wrote Red Toothopia on mine, and then everything that Red Toothopia discovers is red something. So one of the islands I discovered was named Red Sonya. And then someone thought that was pretty good, but I should have said Red Sansa. So that happened. So there's Red Sansa now. Then there's Red Sands. So I'm kind of like got this theme going on so that what's kind of fun about this for me is every place my guys have touched, I was there. And it's getting to the point where the other guys are trying to discover islands before me because they're tired of me naming everything red, which is pretty good. so there's a little meta game going on there. But did you do anything crazy in your naming conventions, Eric?
Yeah, we had. My friends were trying to be as punny as they can, and then they did things like province, as in PRO
right
space VINCE,
yep.
The province of province, and then they did stuff like that. I kind of named my first character after my wife, and then things happened right near the beginning, and then just
that actually upset one of our players too. So one of our players named his first character after his wife, and something happened, and then he was like, crap, I just gave it one of my best names, and now that person's out of here, and I got to make a whole new name up. And so they got frustrated. And I was like, yeah, but just, back in those days, everybody was just the second and the third. Just name someone, an heir. I mean, just, make them succession. Yeah. So I didn't really understand the frustration with that, but he did get frustrated. It sounds like as you did too with that. So let's talk what's in the box, though. So we get the game board. We get a sideboard for all the market stuff, which is nice and big and thick also. You get 10 plastic ships. There's 2 different sculpts. Every faction gets 2 of these ships. They're all color-coded by faction. And so you got a smaller ship and a larger ship. You get 15 customized D6s that are special icons on them for the game. You get 40 good cubes. So like many good, trade and pick up and deliver games, cubes are the different resources by color. You get 5 player province boards, which are basically the player mats for each player. So this is a table hog. This game likes its space.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You also get the captain's book. So one of the cool parts of this game that I particularly enjoy is that there is an entire book of little paragraphs of story. And as you do things during the game, you're going to be instructed to go to entry 435 and read it. And this will have some cool, flavorful, fun story, and then we'll also tell you what to actually do. So there's this entire book of these things. Do not go read that book cover to cover. You are spoiling it if you do. You just put that aside and then only consult it when you're instructed to by the game mechanics. You're also going to get a nice full-color rulebook. However, I have 2 complaints about this rulebook. There is no table of contents, nor is there an index, which is really annoying. And almost all the Legacy games have this problem because in the Legacy games, they have these little, and I think they do this on purpose, there's little sections where there's blanks. And as more and more of the game gets discovered and exposed, you get stickers that you stick into the rulebooks that adds rules to the game, which makes sense. But then when you want to go look up those rules later, there's no index to go find out where the rules are for, whatever the new thing is.
Yeah.
Which go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
Also, it's like when you look at the rules, you see there's blank spaces here and there. So you kind of like, well, I guess in the future this will happen. You kind of start to infer. It's kind of hard to like don't infer because I guess we played Risk Legacy, we played Pandemic Legacy. So when you see certain blanks here, you say, well, I guess in the future we're going to have more actions here to do. Yeah.
You can definitely see like, oh, look, in the future there's going to be more win conditions, or in the future there's going to be more setup instructions, or in the future, you can kind of see that for sure. And that's part. All the Legacy games have that component to them where, oh, look, more rules are coming, right? You get this cool little dial thing called the Astrolabe, and that's essentially a fancy turn counter. You also get a whole bunch of tokens. You get a whole bunch of cards. You also get several sheets of stickers, and these stickers are basically used to make permanent marks on the game. There's a whole bunch of those as well. More about that in a little bit. You also get, as I mentioned before, really 12 little cardboard chests, 6 of which are locked, sealed with stickers that you're not supposed to open until instructed by the game. They all have different icons on the top. So at some point, you're going to read a passage from the captain's book that's going to say, and now open the chest with this symbol and have a little octopus on it or something. It's time to open that chest. And you want to do those because inside those chests, it adds new components to the game, new cards to the game, new stickers to the game, and, of course, new rules to the game, and adds more depth to the game. So what's kind of neat about the Legacy games, and this one in particular does this pretty well, is that the rules build over time. So the game starts out very, very simple, and the more you play it, the more depth gets added. That's not quite the same in the other Legacy games. So in Risk, there's a little bit of that, but it's more like just crazy new stuff happens in Risk. In this game, there's actual new mechanics get stacked onto each other. So in the first game you play, there's very little you can do. In the second game you play, there's a little more you can do. Like there's no interplayer combat in the first actual session you play. It's just not allowed. Then the next game that comes in and those rules get introduced. And later, boxes get opened that introduce whole new mechanics to the game. So the game does get more complex as you go. There's also, and all the metal coins I mentioned before too. So quite a bit in the box. Craig, does it make all... Are you getting a sort of a mental image in your head of what's in there?
That does look like a pretty chock full box. Yeah.
What do you think about that for
$79.99?
Yeah. How does that feel for $80?
Getting your money's worth.
I think so. How about you, Eric? You've seen the components. You played it a few times. Does $80 feel like a fair price for all that?
No, I think it should, because the quality of the stuff you get. I mean, the stickers and stuff, it is not very high quality. It feels like you said cardboard box for the chest. Actually, it's very thin, heavy card stock box, not really cardboard box per se.
Yeah, but I think I think when you add up, here's my thing. So my rule of thumb now is, if we live in a gaming world where a card game in a box is $35 to $40, right, which is essentially all that's in there is a deck of cards. So if that's the world we live in, this game has got, easily, quite a few cards, a lot of cards. Then you got the game board, cardboard, all the player mats, cardboard, 40 game cubes, 15 custom dice, which we know from having different interview people on the show, dice aren't cheap to make. You got 10 plastic ships. I think that's worth another $40 on top of the cards, right? So I kind of feel like I'm with you, though. I do wish I think the art on the line drawings of the art on the people you hire. I'm having a blank on their title right now, but the people
advisors,
you hire. Thank you, the advisors. Yeah. So the advisors, the line art is nice. It would be nice if they were full colored. Like, there's not as much full color artwork in the game as there could be, right? Most of the cards,
correct, yeah.
I guess the treasure cards are pretty cool looking, but the damage cards are pretty boring, right? There's some cool art later that comes up in the game. So I don't know. I think it's a fair price. I don't know if it's a great deal, right? It's not a value. And I do think the game, one of my disappointments is the game board is very plain. And I think the plan was that over time, you put more and more stickers in the game board so it gets more and more interesting, because you literally, and this is not a spoiler at all because you see it's going to happen, as you play the game, one of the things is most of the board is very empty and just a bunch of hexes. And as you play the game, you're going to discover new islands, which will be stickers you stick on the board, and you're going to discover other sorts of things that will flesh the sea out to add more to it. But that never looks as cool as like a fully artistically built game board.
Yeah.
So you never really have that awesome looking game board.
Yeah, because it's subjective to how you place a sticker. I mean, if you are clumsy and you paste it wrongly, I need to take it out now, and that's the problem.
Oh, and go ahead.
One big problem that we found is when we placed one of the stickers on the folds of the board. Yeah.
Yep. We had the same problem. So on that particular case, so there is two moments where you're going to need to put a sticker right on the seam of the board, and there's no way to avoid this. And so what you want to do when you do that, and we made this mistake too, is find a pair of scissors and cut the sticker neatly in half and put it on either edge of the seam. If you don't do this, it's going to be a mess. It's going to pop off, or you're going to end up, it's going to get nasty. So don't.
I'm kind of surprised because you could fold the board the other way, and then there's not.
Yeah, they could. That was an error. I think that was an error on their part. I would agree with you on that. So that's what's in the box. So I think it's a fair price. I don't think it's a great deal though. But again, when you talk about much stuff is in the game, I think it's all right. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about setting this game up. So what's interesting about this game is that setup does eventually get more complex, but we'll talk about the early setup because it's not that much different. You're going to flop out the game board. Each player is going to set up his or her own little region. So you're going to throw your province board down in front of you. Each player starts with an empty chest, a little cardboard empty chest that over time you're going to fill with all your bits. So after the first play, you're going to put all your bits that are left over from your whatever you ended with that you're allowed to keep back in the little chest. And you'll just next time you play, you just pop your chest open. There's an icon on it that matches your faction, and you're ready to go. So you're going to have that. You're going to have a title card. So each player has a title like Baron or Count, and these title cards influence the gameplay order and starting conditions. And the higher ranking you are, it's kind of funny. The higher ranking you are, it's sort of the least you get some benefits, but you also get penalized in other ways because the rest of the table kind of hates you. So it's a leveling system where, and how it works is each game you start, the highest ranked player in the campaign is the highest ranked person, is the highest ranked, lord or lady. And the lower you are on the current score track, the lower your ranking is. And there's a lot of benefits for not being highly ranked. So basically what happens is it's a catch-up mechanic. So if you fall too far behind, you have a way to sort of keep in the game. And actually, we've seen that already work several times. And people have gone from last place into first place in one game because of some of those starting advantages, which is pretty cool. So you get that. You also get you put your ships in the harbor. You get your pile of enmity tokens, which are a little set of tokens, which basically you start distributing these enmity tokens anytime you do anything that would piss someone off, essentially, right, Eric? So
Yeah.
In the beginning of the game, if I go and start ravaging an island and stealing resources from it, I put enmity tokens on the island, which represents how mad the locals are getting at me for not just dealing trade with them, but actually, fighting them and killing them. And later in the game, when player interaction starts and I can start attacking people, if I were to steal something from Eric and attack his ships, I would have to give Eric some enmity tokens, which basically means our countries, our provinces are at war, and that will give Eric some advantages against me in the future. So basically, the more sort of animosity you create in the world is good in one hand because you're stealing lots of stuff, but it's bad on the other hand because a lot of people are starting to hate you. And the more places that hate you, it more drives up the cost of goods. It makes it harder to win in combat, and other little factors kick in. So you do want to kind of balance out how many people you really aggravate, and you don't want a war on every front. Is that fair, Eric?
Yeah, and the good thing is that most of the tokens are temporary for that game. But there are chances where it may become permanent later on.
So what happens is those enmity tokens are, as Eric mentions, those are just tokens that go back and forth as you play a particular session. But at the end of the session, any tokens that remain either on an island or with another player become stickers on the board representing long ongoing feuds and ongoing hatred, right? So you can eventually pull back on those and remove them, but it takes a lot more work to get rid of them. And so literally I end up raiding someone's home port like 4 times in a row, and they hate my guts now. So one of the players just absolutely hates my nation, and we have but the bad part about that is if I fight him in combat, he has all these advantages because when they see my sails in distance, they know I'm a bad guy. So which is kind of neat. So it's definitely a double-edged sword to set people on edge against you. You also get a set of tokens representing your starting reputation and fortune, which are sort of resources you can use in the game, and beyond the classic resources of silk, wood, and all that stuff. And those are really interesting, and your leader has a starting stat for those, but as the campaign progresses, your leader will get stickers and other things that enhance their starting powers. So that's just setting up your play area. Then also there's a deck of advisors, as Eric mentioned earlier, and these are basically people you can hire on to work with you for the duration of this particular session. They generally don't stay with you the entire campaign. You got to rehire them every time, although you can keep one person from game to game to keep that going. So you're going to have that deck all shuffled up, ready to go. There's going to be a sideboard with all kinds of upgraded structures you can build for your port, as well as upgrades to your ships, and those all get put out there. And again, you're going to notice on this sideboard there's lots of empty spaces in the beginning of the game, and that's because as the game progresses and you open more and more chests, there will be more and more cool upgrades for your ships and structures you can build. So in the beginning of the game, not a lot of choices, but as the game progresses, more and more of those options start to appear.
I think none of these are real spoilers because when you first lay out the board, you see a lot of spaces.
You see there's all these openings, right?
Yeah, you kind of know it's coming. Easy to assume that there's going to be more stuff coming out later on. Yeah.
What's cool about it, though, is, and this is what gets interesting, is what you may not expect is where those upgrades go. So, like early on, you could ask yourself, is this a historically accurate game about trading and piracy, or is there going to be fantasy elements in this game? And is it going to become have supernatural components to it? Is that going to happen? And so you don't know in the beginning. There's no hint to any of that, and you have to play the game to find out. I'll try not to spoil any of that. So also you're going to get that's pretty much most of the stuff there. And there's also a glory track on the left-hand side of the board, and that is where it's basically the victory point tracker. So everybody starts at 0 in the early parts of the campaign. Later, there is the ability, some of that carries over a little bit from game to game, but in the beginning, it all starts at 0. There's also going to be, depending on which game you are on in your campaign, you put a token down to indicate how many glory points are needed to win this particular session. So it starts out at 11, but progressively that goes up. And there's a table on the back of the book that shows you. So as you get farther in the game, achieving victory is harder, but you also have ways to get victory points faster. So it still stays at about the 2-hour play length time. And last but not least, there is a row of milestone cards. And these are specific objectives that will change over time as the campaign progresses. And they set the tone for all the players as what they should be trying to accomplish in a particular session, because they give you lots of bonus glory if you achieve them. So they kind of try to hint you in the beginning of the game. They're very clear things that you're going to do this session. In the later game, you can see you will not achieve some of these milestones in this particular session, but you can start setting up your strategy for 2 or 3 games down the road where you're going to want to achieve that objective and get lots of glory points. And that's kind of an interesting idea, because one of the things I didn't notice in in neither in Pandemic Legacy nor in Risk Legacy was this idea that you're setting up your strategy and trying to build an engine for a future game session, right? Like in those, it was sort of like, well, in Risk Legacy, it's just win as many times as you can. But in this game, it's kind of like, well, there's going to be an objective that's probably not going to be really attainable for anyone until 3 or 4 sessions down the road. But if I start optimizing for exploration, I'll be uniquely positioned to get that spot, get that objective, right? Which is kind of interesting. It's kind of a longer range strategic thinking that you don't get in a lot of board games, which was kind of cool. So that's setup. Did I cover it okay, Eric? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think you did fine.
Yeah, one other thing we should mention is that you do have to sit in a certain order based on your cards, your rank cards, and those actually say you should be sitting to the left of the Lord and the right of the Prince or whatever, and that then dictates play order also. So the play order is very heavily influenced by your rank, which also gives you an advantage for being first in most cases. So, so that's setup. Craig, is it making sense so far? You with me here?
So far, so good.
All right. So
it's very involved.
Well, I don't know if it's as well. Maybe we'll see. So it's not that hard to play. I think the basic mechanics are pretty simple. I don't know, Eric. We'll get to that in a second. You tell me if you think so too. But I think the basic mechanics are pretty straightforward. And as we talk about with any game we start to describe in the show, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what are we trying to do to win the game? And as I mentioned, the whole goal of this game is to get glory. So it's essentially a victory point game. Whoever gets to the victory point objective for this game first, you finish that round, and then that game is over, the highest score being the winner. The thing to remember, though, is that this is a campaign, and the real objective is to have the most overall victory points at the end of the campaign, and your victory points are cumulative. So while I mentioned before that for each session you generally start at 0 glory, at the end of the game you take whatever glory you earned this session and add it to your prior total. So you do have a running total in the back of the rule book of each person's glory and how much they've earned. So if I earned 8 glory the first game and I earned 10 glory the second game, now after the second game I'm at 18 glory. And if Eric earned 20 glory total, he's now 2 ahead of me, and he is now the highest ranked player in the game, so he gets the best rank, but also the least powerful position in the game usually. So
which brings the question. I mean, you probably halfway through the campaign, you can see where you are in terms of points you get.
Yep.
And I haven't reached there yet, but if you are really behind, like you are 30, 40 points behind, do you think that you would feel like you want to play some more to try to get
let
back?
me tell you what just happened. So that's a great question. And that was one of the things I was worried about, because when you think about it, it's a cumulative victory point game. What happens? So we just went into a game where the lead player was 20 or like 17 points ahead of last place. And the last place player just finished, and he was like, oh, man, nothing went right for him. He actually scored like 1 point the game before.
Ooh,
so he comes in last place. We played the game. He got this rhythm going this game, and it was the shortest game we played. It was over in 45 minutes. He got to one island. He got this tomb. He started exploring it like crazy. Got all this great treasure. Boom, boom, boom. And in like 3 actions, he got to 19 victory points, ended the game on us. The closest next player was 4. And after that game he now is actually tied for first place. So boom. Now, what's interesting about that is that worked out for him, a little bit of luck, but also because he was first player. And you're first player when you are the lowest person in the list. Now, also, one other thing we should say is that one of the game balance things is during setup, on your rank card, it says, collect one of the following advantages for every 5 victory points you're behind the leader. Right?
We should. This is a bit of a spoiler, I think. I mean,
no spoilers.
Not really. No, it's not a spoiler. It's only after game 1, so it's not really a spoiler. So what ends up happening is after game 1, if you're...
We can say that there's rubber banding involved.
Yes. So there are mechanics, right, that allow you to catch up, right?
Correct,
so and we've observed them working. So he was able to do that because he was last place by many multipliers. So he started the game with many more resources than the rest of us, right? And he got to go first. And so he was able to blast through some of these things. Now that's on the other foot. He won't be able to do that next game because he won't have as much starting resources, and he's not going to be first either. He's actually going to be last.
Yeah,
because he's now.
I would say that for ours, we had a player who was last of a few games, and he was always last. And the rubber banding bonuses didn't really do much for him.
mostly because of, we will explain how the game works later on. But the thing is that he did win the last game, but the overall score, he is still behind.
Yeah.
So that's why we are kind of worried that as we play more, that halfway through we'll feel that, well, there's no point really playing anymore because we're so far behind. And so we're kind of slightly worried about that right now.
Well, he's still going to always have, and I'm curious if that happens to us. Right now, we're really close. Right now in our campaign, it's a 4-point game between first and last place with 4 players playing. And we're all like hovering around wherever we're at. Like we're at we're in the 20s for glory overall. So it's, or 30s, I guess. So right now it's really tight. But I think what's interesting is the more you fall behind, the way the catch-up mechanics work, the bigger your force multiplier to catch up. So if you're in last place for several games in a row, you're going to start several games in a row with multiples more resources than other players and, multiple turns of advantages. So theoretically, as you start to figure out the mechanics of the game and really understand how you can do certain things, but because you have so many choices of what you can do, it's very easy to do nothing or to misunderstand what you do have to. It's one of those games where, because it's a classic 4X game, none of the players really needs to do anything to advance the end condition, right? Each game, right? If you could all do things that don't generate a lot of glory, and theoretically it would move very slowly and take a long time to finish the game. But if one of the players starts racing towards victory, you got to all see that and react to it. So you do have to have that player interaction and watching your opponent. You can't just be doing your own thing in the corner going, I'm just going to explore this island for 5 turns and just sail around in a circle and do fun things and do these things. If you do, that's fine. But the rest of the world is zooping past you, right? So you do have to kind of watch what your opponents are doing very carefully,
But I like exploring.
I know, but that's part of the challenge. But the thing is, I think what's interesting about this game, and I think this is going to come down to the analysis, and we had a big debate about this actually last night over sushi, which was after we played, which was, is this an experience or is it a game? Right? So think about that in the background. Is this an experience? Is this a story that's unfolding?
Best game ever, but is it fun?
Right. Let's talk about that more. Okay. So that's how you win. So how you win basically is collecting glory. The primary way you get glory is by, actually there's a bunch of ways, but one of the most common ways is completing an endeavor. So the two most common things you're going to be doing often is either exploring or raiding. And either of these things involve rolling dice. And essentially when you do one of those and you succeed, you get a glory point, period. Oftentimes they will lead to multiple glory points depending on what happens there. You also get a glory every time you upgrade your ship or build a building. You also get glory every time you buy some treasure. The treasure has glory icons on it. You get that much glory for that as well. You get glory every time you complete a milestone. So those are the objectives that are on the side of the board. They're cards. And it might say things like, be the first player to discover a new island or whatever. And boom, you get over glories in the card there. Some advisors you can hire, particularly later in the game, have glory icons on them. So if you hire that advisor, you get some glory there. And there's all kinds of other things that can happen that give you glory. But those are the primary ways. So basically, do stuff and succeed at it, and you get some form of glory, right? And in the early games, you only need like between 11 and 15 glory points. So it's not a lot of glory. You do a few explorations, you hit a milestone or two, and you're already near 9 or 10 points, and now you're within striking distance of winning. So that's how you get glory. Anything I missed there, Eric, on that front?
No, yeah. It's just kind of weird. Like usually when you feel like, I'm gaining glory, I'm going to do something significant to gain glory. But the fact that you can buy a ship upgrade and buy a structure to gain glory kind of feels like a bit off narrative for me. Like when you explore an island or when you explore an island and do get the resources from the island, and that also gives you glory. So that doesn't feel glorious enough to get glory.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is that my thinking here is, because I played some 4X games where you get no glory for any basic actions, right? So I'm thinking about there's a couple different games like this, right? And but the problem with that plan is that the game could never end, because unless you do the specific items that give you glory, in this game, most normal actions you would do just to build your empire, like upgrading your ship, buying a building, or doing basic exploration and trading, give you small amounts of glory. So basically, the game's going to end in 15 turns, right? Because if it's a 15-point glory game, because everybody's going to do something. So there's a little bit of a timer. But what ends up happening, though, is the the milestone cards, because they'll give you like 4, 6, 8 glory sometimes, they're a force multiplier on that. So you just got like 5 turns worth of glory now for doing something really glorious. And that's what happened with our player who's in last place. He started exploring tombs and finding these amazing idols that did all kinds of cool stuff, and it was like glory for that. And then he got a second one, and it was glory for that. And by the way, having 2 of those is a milestone. He got like 10 glory in like 2 turns. It was like, oh my God. And it was cool because it felt very glorious. And here we are going, I bought a building, I got 1 glory. And so we're like, oh crap, at least I want to get. And then what started happening was we started vying for not being in last place or trying to take the less damage. So we started having this little fight at the end to not be. And then it was like, no, I want to be in last place because I want the advantages. So it's kind of this interesting. So you're like, if I do absolutely nothing, I'll be in last place, which will give me the better position for the next game. But then I won't have built any long-term advantage for myself in other ways. So it's like this really interesting sort of thing that starts happening. There's all kinds of. Our group is super meta, so I should point that out. But it was very weird. But anyway, so that's the glory system. So let's get into the basic mechanics of this thing. So what happens basically is each game takes place in years, they call them, right? And a year is winter plus 6 rounds. Don't ask me why it's 6 rounds and not 3 seasons or whatever, but it's winter plus 6 rounds. And how it works is this is where that little astrolabe circle thing comes in, where it's going to keep track of each round you go through. So a round is, so first winter happens, and winter is kind of like the cleanup phase and the harvest phase. So in the winter phase, you reset the astrolabe and the event deck move to the next player, if it's not the very first turn of the game. So that's player 1 shifts. You refresh all the advisors, which means on the board there's a spot for a sort of a market of advisors you can pull from. You're going to bring them all back in the deck and reshuffle out a new set. You're going to harvest, so all the buildings, all the fields and everything on your player mat are going to generate resources for you. You just look at those and get those numbers. You're going to move enmity tokens around. So this is where if you've created enmity out there on the islands, those things kind of shift back to certain spots. And the islands produce. So the islands, all of these little icons on them to indicate whether they are different kinds of goods. So white is for silk, and yellow is for, I think it's corn, and brown is for wood, or maybe it's gold, I can't remember. But then there's different color-coded goods. And so you look on the islands and make sure you repopulate them all, because during the course of a round, players will be buying and stealing these goods from the island, and they'll be empty. But then during the winter, they all repopulate. And you refresh any cards that got basically turned off or tapped, right? So things can happen where cards are turned over and put face down, and during winter, they all come back to turned on again. So that's the winter phase. It's basically the reset phase. Then,
and of course,
go ahead.
As the game progresses, there will be more and more things, I think.
Yes,
will be added
the winter phase has a few blank spots in the rulebook there to add a few more steps as you progress, right? Then there's the non-winter phase. So these are the things that happen during each player's turn. So during your turn, so now winter's over. It's no longer coming. I guess it's coming now later. So it's now it's the first turn on the astrolabe. So player 1's going to go, and here's what's going to happen. Each player is going to hire. He or she can start by hiring an advisor. So you look at the advisor pool, and you can hire one for your advisor team. And to hire them, there's a coin cost on there, so you can pay it in gold, or there's a renown cost on it. These are tokens that represent how well known you are, and you can spend for renown either. Generally, it's less renown tokens, so it's a little bit cheaper than spending gold, but renown's also harder to get than gold, so you want to be more careful about that. So you get an advisor if you want, or if you don't want to hire an advisor, you can buy a treasure instead. So there's a deck of treasures that are face up, and you can choose to buy a treasure. The reason you buy a treasure is that there are sometimes milestones around collecting treasures, but also each treasure is worth some glory. Mm-hmm. And the more you spend on treasure, the more glory you get. So treasure purchasing, what that does for you is basically it makes gold a path, an engine path to glory. Because if you start harvesting lots and lots of gold, you can start spending gold on treasure and buying really expensive treasures, and now you can get glory that way. So what's neat about the game is there are different engines you can build for your empire or your province to get success. Gold is one of them because you can buy treasures. Exploration is another one because you get a lot of glory for exploring and finding places. Combat's another one because raiding's another one because you can steal from places to get combinations of glory, and then being able to trade also is another one as well, selling goods. So lots of different ways you can do that, but basically, essentially, you're gonna that's about. So you can then choose which advisor you want to activate after you hire an advisor or buy treasure. You can choose one of your advisors to be face up in a little slot on your board that says, this advisor is working for me this turn. all advisors basically do is they offer bonuses to all the different things you can do. Some advisors might make your ships sail farther this turn. In fact, one of them does. He gives you sail +3. We named him Avatar Aang. He's the wind guy. So we have yeah, right.
Yeah, so we name him Fart Master.
Oh, fart. See, look, you guys are not you're not in the spirit
went
of this.
in a different direction.
Right. So one of the things we should mention.
Literally.
So here's one of the. So customization in this game is everywhere. So for example, every advisor, it'll say like the navigator on it, right? Yeah. Or it'll say the windmaster on it. But there's a square on the top of the card, a spot for the name of the person, but it's blank. And the rule is the first person to hire that advisor gets to take a pen out and permanently name him or her. Mm-hmm. So we have an excellent exploration guide who is named Pocahontas, for example. You can just write whatever you want on these cards. And one of the guys looks like Kirk Douglas, so Kirk Douglas is on our deck, you know. So just whatever you want to do gets written on these. So part of the fun is if you hire an advisor, you get to name them, which is pretty neat.
Yeah,
so
that's fun.
That's cool. And then also what happens too is there are all the islands that get discovered are blank on the top. As I mentioned earlier, you name those. So there's a lot of naming going on. You name your port, you name your province, you name your ships. On your card, there's a spot for the names of each of your ships. You name those. So there's lots of naming happening continually in this game. So again, you activate your advisor, which is going to give you some bonuses that turn. You typically want to pick the advisor that is going to help benefit the thing you're trying to do this turn the most. Also, remember, once you activate your advisor, at the end of your turn, you're going to turn them face down, and they won't be ready again until winter. And remember, winter comes every 6 rounds. So you do want to be careful about using advisors because once you've exhausted a particular advisor, you're not going to get them again for a little while. So make sure you optimize when you use that sailing bonus guy versus the exploring bonus guy. So you activate your advisor. And next thing you're going to do sounds cool, but it's really just picking a turn type. It's called Hire a Guild. So the fluff here is each player is on a handy little quick reference card. And there are 4 guilds you can choose from to try to basically be working with this turn. There's the Merchants Guild, the Builders Guild, the Explorers Guild, and the Soldiers Guild. All this choice is really doing for you is indicating which of 3 actions you can choose from, and you get to take 2 of those things. So each guild gets 3 choices for actions. You're going to get to use 2 of those actions. Every guild has an option for sailing. That's one of the actions you can do. And then the rest of the options are based on the guild type. So, for example, the Soldiers Guild, raiding is one of their choices. Taxation is the other one of their choices. So the Soldiers Guild can raid and sail, or they could sail and tax. And taxing just means you get some money based on the current taxation value of your leader. And then also, if you wanted to, you could do raiding and taxation, but you wouldn't be able to sail that turn, right? So each of the guilds has different choices, but essentially all you're doing is basically choosing which type of actions you want to take by picking the guild. After you take all those actions, pretty much your turn's over. You'd claim any milestones you would have achieved at this point by getting certain, whatever the conditions of the milestones are. You turn your advisor face down because he's exhausted, and your turn's over. And now it's Eric's turn, and he goes and does the same thing. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much the core mechanics. We should probably get into some, what some of those guild actions actually are, but that's pretty much the basics. You hire an advisor or buy some treasure. You pick which advisor you're going to have turned on for this turn. You pick which guild you're going to do, which is going to give you 2 different actions to choose from, essentially. And then you claim your milestones and you're done if you got anything done. Make sense, Craig?
Yeah.
All right. Eric, how we doing? You sticking with me here so far? Anything I'm missing?
No.
All right.
Good so far.
So let's talk about what the different guilds do. So first of all of them has the option to sail. So basically you can move your ships. Moving your ships is dirt simple. When you look at your player mat, there is a separate section for each of your 2 ships. And remember, as I mentioned before, each player's got 2 cool plastic ships. One is large and one is small. Each of the ships has a set of blocks under them for different values. So there's a sail value, there's a raid value, there's an explorer value, there's a hold value. And each of these values has a set of blocks under them. Some of them are filled in and some of them are not. And that's indicating their current value. So the sail value of the ship, for example, is how many hexes on the board the ship can move when you choose to do a sail action. And a sail action means you get to move both of your ships if you want to. At the start of the game, your little ship gets to move 3 squares. Anyway, the smaller ship's faster than the big ship, and one of them moves 2 squares and one of them moves 3 squares at the beginning of the game. But as the game progresses, you will be given opportunities to color in squares on your board and improve the different aspects of your ship. You can make it better at raiding, you can make it better at sailing, you can give it a bigger hold so it's harder to sink but also holds more stuff, things like that, right? So your ships will change and morph over time over the course of the campaign, and you might choose to make your your empire very, very good at being a merchant because you have big cargo holds, whereas Eric might choose to be a good pirate and make his ships really, really good at raiding, right?
Arr,
exactly. I chose exploration, so I wanted to be the explorer and have all the islands named after me. So my ships are really good at exploring and are reasonably fast, but they're only mediocre in combat. The good news is by hiring the right advisors, you can mitigate some of that problem, right? If you get the right advisors in place, some of them give you better bonuses in rating and things like that, so you can kind of offset that a little bit. So what are the different guilds that you do? Well, first of all, sailing, simple, you move your ships. Second of all, if you choose the Merchants Guild, you can buy goods. So if you are at an island, and the way the board works is pretty simple, certain hexes have little island symbols on them. In the beginning, they're all painted on the board, but later, as you discover new islands, you'll put stickers on there. And there's little dotted lines from the island where it is in the middle of the sea to the side of the board where there's a bigger map of the island. And on this bigger map, during the winter phase, there's little squares on the island, and these little squares generate the resource of that matching color type. So when you get to an island, there might be some gold there, or some corn there you can buy, for example, or there's some silk you could buy, or some wood you can buy, or some iron you can buy. And you can spend money to buy resources. And you might get bonuses or save discounts on that depending on your current advisor. You can buy, it's basically 3 gold to buy some goods. So you can buy some goods there at the island. One of your actions if you choose the Merchants Guild. The other action choice you have is to sell goods. So you're going to pick the merchant actions if you're trying to buy goods or sell goods. To sell goods, you got to either be back at your home port or at any island with a certain icon on it that tells you the kind of goods you can sell there, right? So you go ahead and sell them, make some money. So you can already, there's the merchants part of the game. Basically, you can go buy goods from one place, sell them somewhere else for more money, or acquire goods and sell them elsewhere. And so basically that's it. So the merchant guild's going to be buying, selling, and sailing, right? Making sense, Eric? Missing anything?
No.
Right.
Yeah, you're doing fine.
That's it? Okay, good. The next thing you can do, in addition to merchant guilds, you might decide to choose the building guild. So the building guild lets you sail also. All the guilds let you sail is one of your choices. Or you can choose a repair or upgrade action. So this action is how you either fix your ship that's damaged or upgrade your ship. Where you can repair and where you can upgrade, your home base always lets you do both these things. But also while you're at sea, certain islands, not all of them, have icons on them that allow you to do these things as well. If you choose to repair, you exhaust the you just basically pay some money, and it depends on the island. Some places the repair is for free. Some places you pay some money for them. And when you take damage in combat in this game, you get damage cards on your ship, which give you disadvantages. And so you want to repair to get rid of those disadvantages and be able to still do stuff. So that's why you'd repair. To upgrade your ship, remember we mentioned before, there's a market with all kinds of little cardboard on it that show you cool ship upgrades. There's also slots on your player board where you can put these little upgrades next to your ships to give them things. The upgrades do everything from increase the speed of the ship, increase the cargo hold, increase the raid value, all the things you probably want to do. And the kind of upgrades you can buy are indicated by the icons of where you're getting the upgrades from. A little note here, you can pay the cost of the upgrade on the cardboard you're buying. So each piece of cardboard shows you how much it costs. But in addition to paying for gold, you can also trade in one of those colored goods that matches the color of the upgrade you're buying to get a discount on the upgrade. So you can use goods to make it cheaper. So for example, if you're buying an upgrade related to sails, you could discount silk, a sail thing, to get sails cheaper. So there's different ways you can do that. So you could be someone who's really good at generating money and not worry about the cargo, but you also could be good at someone who's really, really good at getting different kinds of cargo and goods and use those to make upgrades more affordable. Right?
Yeah. One thing to note is that these upgrades are not permanent. So, yeah, at the end of the round, you just discard all of them.
Yeah. You don't discard them at the end of the round. You discard them at the end of the game.
End of
right.
the game.
Yeah. So they're not permanent in the campaign, but they're permanent for that session. Right.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that's that. The other option is to build, which is similar to the upgrading your ship, but in this case, you're buying a building. And buildings go on your main player board. And these things increase your defense, or they give you more actions, or they give you increased money per turn, or things like that. You buy those for the cost shown. Some of them also give you bonus glory as well, but they always get one glory for either building or upgrading a sail. So that's the build action. Making sense so far, Craig? Pretty simple?
Yes. Yep.
All right. After the build action, the next thing you can do is the explore action. And now we're getting into the real action here, where things really happen. So with
the Explorers Guild of Adventure.
Yes, exactly right. So the explorers also have a sail choice, or they can choose to explore. Now, to explore, you need to be on an island. Your ship needs to be at an island, and at this island, there's going to be squares that have little symbols on them, little icons that don't match the current goods. So in the beginning of the game, there aren't any little goods squares on the islands typically. There are just a bunch of icons with little shields below them and numbers. And these are places you can explore. And what you're going to do is you're going to have to roll some dice and try to beat the target number in successes equal to or exceed the target number in order to successfully explore a spot. So under each spot, there's a little number, and the higher the number, the harder it is to explore. So your first thing you're going to do is when you decide you're going to explore, you're going to get a dice pool. This dice pool is equal to your ship's explore value. Remember I told you there's squares there? So you might have a ship that's got an explore value of 3. You get a bonus die if there's an additional one of your ships there helping. So you pick your main ship and his explore value is 3, that's 3 dice. Maybe there's a buddy there, so you get 4 dice. Maybe you've got an advisor that you've turned on this turn who says he adds +1 to explore, so now you're at 5 dice. Now you roll all these dice, and you're looking for symbols on them. And typically, there's 3 different kinds of symbols. There's a plain dot, there's a little star, and there's a star with a circle. At most times in the game, all of those things mean the same thing. They just mean success. And what you're trying to get is enough symbols on your dice that equal to or exceed that little number on the shield. So if that little number on that shield is a 3 and I roll 3 or more successes, I have successfully explored that spot. If I roll equal to less than that, my ship takes damage equal to the difference. So if I need 3 successes and I only rolled 2, then my ship's going to take 1 damage card. As long as my ship didn't sink, I still successfully explore it. So as long as I've got enough damage, I can take the damage. Damage stinks because it does cause bad things to happen to my ship, but I can still successfully explore as long as I didn't sink all the way, right? As long as I take enough damage to sink. And 3 damage, by the way, sinks a ship. And some of these sites, by the way, are really hard. Now, there's some other things that can help you mitigate this luck problem. First of all, remember I mentioned there's these things called fortune tokens. For every fortune token you spend, you can turn 1 die from a failure to success. However, there are some of these little icons on islands that are red. And if these defense values are red, it means you can't use fortune to offset the roll. There are also other icons with special islands with special rules. Like there's this one fluffy island we found. Well, it may have. Anyway, the story was that there were these Aborigines running around.
Don't spoil it.
Anyway, there was a rule on this island that basically said that the single dots don't count. So this is where the icons start coming in. So when the single dots don't count, now you've got less chances of getting as many successes as you need on your dice. There are also event cards that can come in and play and say, it's a good round for sailing. Any sailing challenges, the circled stars count as 2 successes. So there are things that happen in the game that make it better to explore at certain times or better to raid at certain times, like fog moves in and raiding is any circles are double successes for raiding. Things like that happen. But essentially, you're rolling dice, counting the number of symbols on there, and hoping you get into equal to or exceeding that number on the thing.
Yeah, for me, the symbols were a bit, and the colors were a bit confusing initially. It's like, wait, it's red, but there's a shield. And like some of the icons, like when we look at shield, we would think that, it's like a bit more difficult to challenge it. But it's actually you're looking at the colors instead of the shield symbol. I kind of wish that there was another, or maybe alongside the board, it could be like a little chart that shows like this symbol, what does it mean? And stuff like that, that would be good. You're right. There would be good if there was a quick reference card somewhere for that. There is one for the guilds, but you're right. There's not an icon quick reference card, and that would be helpful. That would be helpful. That will make it much more easier to jump in. So our first game, we had quite a tough time trying to remember the rules as we were playing because it's the first time we're playing. Yeah. And I think the rulebook, because one person reading the rulebook, the rest of us were like, what is exploration? What is what is the so I would recommend. So what we did was so the rule books are online, and one of the things we have this one group. I have this one group of gamers I play all these kind of campaign games with, and so what we did was we said before our first session, everybody go read the rule book. So we all came in and none of us had played before, so we were all still winging it. But at least, what that happens then when everybody reads the rule book before you start, what ends up happening is. Everybody's like, oh, you remember this line? There was another line about that. And you're like, oh, yeah, let's look that up. And you kind of find it faster that way. But you're right. It definitely helps. I don't think it's very complicated, but it's different than a lot of other games you played. So it does take a little getting used to. So I think because they use some of the symbols that you acclimatize with in other games. And they use it here slightly differently. So because the shield, you're right. It looks like I guess it's. Well, I think what they're trying to say, it's the defense against what you're trying to do. Right? It's a shield. It's their defense, not your defense. But it's kind of weird. So now what happens now is, this is where it gets kind of interesting. So what happens now is if I succeed in exploring, if my ship sinks, I get nothing.
I lost my ship, which stinks because I got to go do a build action to repair it to bring it back. But say la vie. If I succeed, then what happens is I got to go look at the captain's book. So you go to the captain's book. On the inside cover of the captain's book is this cool map-looking thing. And there's all these little icons all over the map. And what you do is you look at the icon where you explored. So let's say it's the shape of a sun. And then you go look inside the captain's book for a sun. And next to one of those suns is going to be a number, like 243. When you choose one of the suns, there's going to be more than one sun. There's going to be like 4, 5, 6, 10 suns in there with different numbers next to them. You pick one of the suns. So I'm going to pick the 243 sun. I take out a pen and I cross off the sun I just chose. So no one's ever going to be able to pick sun 243 again, ever. Then I go to the page in the rule book with the number 243 next to a little paragraph of text. And then I read aloud to the entire table that little paragraph of text. And the little paragraph of text will be some kind of cool story. So it'll be in italics and it'll be a story. It'll say, and I'm just making this up now, so this is not in the beginning. We spent 3 days pushing through the brush, and finally we found a pile would look like a temple made entirely of gold, but the natives are telling us to stay away. Do you choose to either push past the natives and try to see what treasures lie within, or respect the natives and leave them in peace? If you choose to explore the temple, go to number 332. If you choose to attack the native, to leave the natives in peace, go to number 95. Right? So then you go to the number you chose, and then this is where it gets to be like a make your own adventure, and you read what happens there. And oftentimes the end result is that space on the island will turn into a resource spot. So it'll say you did raid the temple and you discovered it was full of gold and there's a whole gold mine there. Put a gold sticker over the island where you just explored. So that spot that had a sun on it, you put the gold sticker on top of it now, and that represents that now it generates gold cubes. And typically also, if you successfully explored it, you will get a gold cube immediately in your hold. So for exploring, you get a glory point for succeeding, so don't forget that. Then you typically get some kind of, you often get a resource, but not always. Sometimes something bad happens. And then you've now turned a spot on the island from a place that someone can explore to a place that someone will in the future be able to buy goods from or raid for goods, right? That's what basically happens.
Yeah.
Making sense, Craig?
When you did the reading of the books and stuff like that, did your group often choose the peaceful route, or did you guys... Was it a mixed thing? It
depends on the player. we have very local friendly players, and we have very aggressive militaristic players. And what's kind of funny is we were starting to try to find patterns. Like if you're friendly towards the local, does it get better? And they do a pretty good job of mixing it up, so you don't really know the right move all the time to make.
Correct. Yeah. But we tend to all be quite pacifists, as in we don't. Yeah.
Oh no. We did some oppression. There was oppression happening. I'm not going to lie. There was a little bit. In fact, we started calling one of our players Christopher Columbus. It was very awkward. So that's does that exploring make sense, Craig?
Yeah.
So what's cool now is already a story's evolving, right? You're going to start, and what happens, what's pretty neat about this is like things start to happen. Like, so one of our players refused to name the island until he started seeing what happened there. So one of the places ended up having, one of the colors is actually spice. I forget what color it is, but one of the color, it's yellow spice. I can't remember. One of them spice. So this island ended up being mostly spice. And it's all based on like the numbers you choose. It's kind of semi-random, right? So you can get an island that's an equal distribution of different resources, one that's mostly trees and woods. So what ends up happening is you get an island that's well known for being a great place to go buy wood. You get another island that's mostly spice, which got named Arrakis, of course. You get another island that's mostly something else, right? So what ends up happening, you start figuring out where these go. Later in the game, you might find an island with a temple on it that you could explore. Things like that start happening, right? So you're going to start realizing that's where I want to go. That's where I want to exert my control. I want to get there first and buy all the goods before, because once you buy the goods, they don't get replenished until winter comes, or you got to start raiding the island, which you can raid them. And by the way, raiding is exactly the same mechanic as exploring, except you use your raid stat. So if you're going to raid a spot, so let's say we've already gone ahead and explored a spot, and now there's a sticker down there that says it's a spice spot. If it's empty, I can go ahead and raid it, which basically means instead of buying and bartering with the locals to buy the cube of spice that's on there, I'm just going to go ahead and steal it from them. So what that means is then you roll your raid value, and again, you're trying to equal or exceed their defense number, which is still there under, below the sticker where you put the sticker, and you're just trying to beat that to get raid. And if you successfully raid, you get one of those cubes for free. You didn't pay for the good. That's the good news. The bad news is you got to put an animosity token over the spot on the island where you just raided, which means now no one else can raid that spot because there's an animosity token there. And that does move away in winter, so it resets after a year. But basically what happens there is you're now raiding in that island, and later at the end game, if you don't make peace with those people, eventually that island's going to build up animosity for you, and stickers are going to get on there. And the problem with animosity stickers is it increases the raid value, so of the defensive raid value against them. So it's really, and it increases the cost of goods. It becomes harder and harder to raid that island. So what ends up happening is you can go to the island that's covered in spice to steal a bunch of spice to get a lot, but that island is going to start hating you more and more, and over time it's going to be harder and harder for your people to do any business with the spice island, which is kind of neat. So stories start to unfold, and not only are you discovering where these things are located, but you're also starting to see certain players are starting to hate certain areas of the world. It's kind of interesting, or they're hating you. So that's the explore action. The other thing you can do with exploring in the Explorers Guild is you can research, which is pretty simple. You spend some gold. Research, by the way, is not available in the early game. The rules are printed in the rule book, but there's no actions for it until later in the game. And then what you're basically doing there is you just spend some gold and you get some research cards. These cards then give you special bonuses in certain situations. And these research cards do carry over from session to session. But once they're used, they generally go back in the deck. So these are kind of things you can stack up for later. And sometimes they'll give you bonuses, like if you explore this kind of a symbol, you get bonuses, things like that. So that's the explore action. And last but not least is the Soldiers Guild, which, of course, is all about raiding, which is essentially fighting.
Most people call that an army.
Yeah, sure.
The Soldiers Guild.
You, of course, can sail. You can raid. And I already described how raiding works. So basically, you're just rolling your raid stat against the location to raid it. Also, when you look in the book, you'll see there's a section that says raiding a ship, but it's all blank. And it says, in the future, you'll be able to raid your opponent's ships. So they do tease you with the fact that you will eventually someday be able to fight each other. Later, when you do fight it, it's very simple. It's just like raiding a spot on an island, except the defensive value is equal to their hold size. And they basically, you do damage to them. And when you win, you can choose to steal goods from their ship or do damage to them, things like that. So it's pretty straightforward and simple. Don't forget that, again, when you successfully raid or you successfully explore, you get a glory token in addition to any glory that the reading the text gives you as well for those kinds of things. So making sense so far? Anything else? Any other comments on that, Eric? I think it's pretty much the core rules there we got through.
Yeah.
One other thing you can do, you can basically do raid actions against your opponent's port. You can actually go into their home base and raid there, which is where they store all their. Usually, you'll send your ships back to home port, where you keep that's where your advisors technically are located. It's where any goods you bring back to your home port that you can't fit in your ship's hold anymore are going to be. So if I really need something, I can go raid Eric's home port if I want to and steal his stuff there as well, or steal his treasure or other things. But then again, that's going to build animosity up against Eric and I and cause future challenges, because don't forget, at the end of the game, if you don't get rid of all that animosity, it's going to carry over from session to session.
Yeah. And also right at the beginning, the first few games, is almost impossible to raid your opponent's port. I mean, even when the rules is revealed that you can do so, it is also quite difficult because of the default number of dice you need to remove because of the garrison.
Right. What's neat about it is, and there's also not a really compelling reason to do it, right? So you're right, there's garrison values for different places, and what garrison values do, some islands have garrison values, players' home ports have garrison values. You can increase buildings, like you can put guard houses and defensive towers in your port, which increase the garrison value. And what Eric just mentioned is that the garrison value, that subtracts the number of dice you get in a raid attempt against that spot. So it makes it really hard to raid. There's also not very compelling reasons, but as the game progresses, what will happen is there will be specific, like when the attacking player ship rule gets introduced, a milestone comes out that says first player to sink a ship gets bonus glory. So now this is a really, really compelling reason to do it. What's also cool we should mention is not only do the milestones give you immediate glory, but they have a page number to go read out of the captain's book for more story to happen. So the story evolves, and oftentimes it's the milestones that trigger more boxes opening up, right? Not always, but oftentimes that's where the magic is.
And oftentimes we could kind of guess what this milestone would eventually lead to.
Right.
Yeah, for us, right now. It's not too, like, oh, surprise kind of thing. We haven't really came to a reveal where we did not expect it. Not like in Pandemic Legacy and in Risk Legacy, when the twist and the surprise came, we were kind of surprised at it. Yeah.
I was surprised by. Well, I can't say it. But there was a moment. It was pretty cool because there was a moment where something happened, which added a thing to the game that we got into an argument about. Because I predicted there would be this certain component, there would be a certain type of story in the game that everybody else said, no, it's not going to happen. It happened, and they're like, "Whoa, I didn't think that." You're right. And the best part was where it happened. So sometimes when these things, when you make a milestone happen, where it happens makes a permanent mark on the board, which then what happens is it adds cards to the event deck. So one of the things we forgot to mention is whenever it's the first player's turn, so the Astrolabe advances one, also there's a deck of event cards that player turns over. And these cards are something like, fair wins, everybody gets +1 to sail, or, bonuses to rating this turn, or something like that, right?
Yep.
As the game, more boxes open up and more cards get exposed, more cards get added to this deck. And sometimes things happen where there's a spot on the board that gets marked, and whenever a certain card comes up, something happens at that mark. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting is it's sort of neat to see, it's kind of like Risk Legacy when certain permanent marks get on the board that make Australia hard to use or a particular area really bad. That's sort of happening in this game where it's like, oh, that's an awesome island chock full of a good resource, but there's this random event that can happen there. And if you go anywhere near it, you really don't want to be there, So, and that's going to be completely different on someone else's board, right? I mean, that event's going to exist, but where it shows up and how it's related to where the best islands are is going to be completely different, which I thought was going to be
correct. Yeah, and that makes it interesting in the game design perspective because if you think about it, if we want to make a balanced experience for everybody, as in everybody, you want to not make it such that the island is far to one corner, that effect doesn't mean too much kind of thing, versus if it's right smack in the middle and then it has a much more pronounced effect than everything. So like game design wise, it is interesting problem to tackle. Yeah
I think so too. So that's the whole game really. That's all the main mechanics of the game. We should probably just mention a little bit about how the game does evolve. We've talked mostly as we go, but one thing we didn't really mention is how more islands get added to the board. So as you go past the original 4 islands, each row of the board could have another island in it, and there's a giant rectangle with empty spot for a giant sticker that describes the island, and then somewhere in the row there will be a new island. And when you enter what's that? Go ahead, Eric.
And one of which you need to cut in half.
Yes, and one of which is going to be right on the seam you need to cut in half, right? So when you enter these new squares, first of all, there's a deck of cards you got to draw from that could have random events happen to your ship because now you're unexplored waters and strange things happen. But then also, when you get to this spot, there's a target number, a big shield out there that indicates the explorer target you got to hit to explore that island. And there's glory there as well. So the farther out you get in the ocean in unexplored territory, the harder it is to find another island, but the more glory there is in it for you. And then you randomly pull, there's a little deck of island stickers. You randomly pull one out, which then tells you a page number in the book to go read. And so more story happens, as well as a new island gets put to the board, which has a whole new set of areas to explore, some of which are new icons, which lead to new areas of the book. So there are stories in the book based on certain icons that none of those icons appear on the starting islands. So as you find more islands with rarer and more interesting icons on them, it's going to unlock more and more of the story in the game. That's sort of a neat element too. And that's pretty much how it evolves, along with adding more event cards, adding more rules. Like
damage cards.
One of the more damage cards, types of damage. This is not a spoiler because below each island there's the word colony, which implies you can colonize the islands. But in the beginning mechanics, there's no colonization rules. But because there's a giant colony symbol there and spots for things to happen there, clearly there's going to be colonization. I'm in the spot of my campaign now where there is colonization. So you can build colonies, which are really hard to do, but add all kinds of cool abilities and more engines to generate glory. So that's another way it can happen. But another big thing is naming everything. That's part of the fun. It's naming everything. Part of the fun. I think it is. I don't know, Eric, if you're my
Yeah, I agree. Because it gives you, it kind of, like everybody starts to think very deeply about what they want to name it.
Yeah. It gets pretty interesting. Most people, we started to start picking on each other if we name people stupid things. Like,
so do we, yeah.
Because I think that's something you should definitely decide with your group up front. Is it are you all in on no holds barred, name whatever you fun but sort of meaningful names or whatever. You have to decide with your group, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I have Dora the Explorer. We have Bob the Builder.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. All right, so let's get to final thoughts. Before we get to final thoughts, though, Craig.
Yes.
In the style of an ancient seafarer who's just seen something extremely unnatural, please describe the patent pending D6G rating system.
Okay. Well, I'm happy that you're listening to me. I'm having an existential crisis. Am I an ancient seafarer or am I a seafarer from an ancient time? Do you see my problem? Wait a minute. What is that unbelievable thing on the horizon? I can't really tell. Also, am I seeing it through ancient eyes, or am I seeing it in, sort of more youthful eyes, but in an ancient time? I'm so confused. But if I put it all together, like if it's a good thing, maybe I'll give it a lower number, more probable that other people will find it good. But if I give it a high, like if I don't think it's a good thing, maybe I will give it a higher number, meaning the fewer people that would randomly roll. I don't know. I'm also envisioning a cube with different numbers on it. Maybe 1 through 6, or maybe 2 through 7. I don't know. But basically, what I'm thinking is 1 through 6, and the lower the number, the better the number. And maybe if a re-roll, you're going to re-roll that cube. And I know that's not going to be a half, but that could be a half as well. Hello? Hello? Where'd he go?
Nicely done, sir. So, yes, lower is better is pretty much what's happening.
The lower the number, the better.
So, Eric, guests first. What are your final thoughts on Seafall?
So, so some of the things that I felt when I was playing it, I felt it kind of suggested that exploring is fun right at the beginning because of the book that has all this interesting narrative inside there. So it kind of to me, it kind of felt that it wants me to explore. So that's what I did most of the time. I was exploring. But because of that, a lot of it kind of limits you in the terms of how many points you can score, because when you're exploring, you're kind of opening up the island for other players after you to go there and then do the raiding or the buying of goods and stuff like that. And so exploring becomes like you are helping everyone else, and you do get some points, but it doesn't feel as rewarding as it should be, in my opinion. So I kind of felt like bummed about that, because I do like the exploring aspect, like, see what this island is and stuff like that. And the story in the book, after a while, it kind of gets a bit samey.
No spoilers.
Samey.
I hear you saying, yep.
Samey's legit.
Okay. Samey. So yeah, and I guess right at the beginning you can't really attack each other, and because the rules do not appear yet. But right now in our game, at least, there's no tendency to attack each other. There's only the one time when we needed to, because of points. But otherwise, we have always been quite peaceful so far.
All right.
Yeah.
So on a scale on the D6G patent pending rating system, how would you rate? What do you think the odds are the random gamer would enjoy this game?
I would say it's a 4.
4+?
Yeah,
with
4+.
And just no rerolls, just straight up 4+. No. So 50% chance you're gonna like this game. I think it's okay. I can see that. All right. Well, I'll share mine. So I think that's fair. We do have a fair amount of combat. In fact, I mentioned earlier that one of our players had a big catch-up game, and what he got really worried about was he was afraid we were going to come raid him and steal his stuff. And in the game before that, we had a lot of combat, like very much so. In fact, as I mentioned, one of the ports is full of animosity stickers towards me. Like they'd hate my guts. Like I've raided him so many because it was too juicy not to. He didn't put any defenses there, and he kept putting money in his port. I'm like, I'll just take that. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm stealing your money. I'm a pirate. So I like that element of it. I think. So as you were describing your challenges with exploring, I was thinking in my head, isn't that kind of how it really works? I mean, like the first guy to go out there might find something, but it's really you're paving the way for later. And what's neat about the game is in the early game, in the early part of the campaign, it's really heavily about exploring because nothing's known. But later in the campaign, you can stay close to home and build some pretty good engines, or you can go farther at sea and still try to get some glory exploring, but it's a lot harder to do. It becomes very challenging because it's farther from home. You got to get there. And so I think that's pretty interesting. So for me, the storytelling part of that, like this idea that there's these phases of the game where the world is unknown and you're exploring, and then later you move from the exploration phase to sort of the age of, guilds and farming and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like you can sort of see the world evolving, right? So I like that part of it. But again, is that a game or is that an experience? I don't know. I do.
That seems to be like a running theme.
Yeah, right. I mean,
is it a game or is it an experience?
Well, Randy and I were talking about this, and Randy had pretty hardcore thoughts that if it's got score and you can win, it's a game. So one of our comparisons was like, is charades a game or not? Well, you can score and win it, so it's a game. It's not an experience. But anyway, long story short, I think it's a game, but it's a game. It's almost like. Do you ever play Tales of Arabian Nights, Eric?
Yeah, I tried.
That's almost an experience because there's not really a lot of strategic way to win that game.
Correct.
But it's a neat story that gets built. And at the end of the game, you have this sort of crazy story you went through, right? It's almost like one of those storytelling games where you're just telling stories based on cards that are getting drawn, and there's not really you're not trying to win as much as you're just trying to share a story, right? This game's kind of got that with sort of the reading of the book part to it. But there's a lot more meat on the bones of victory point gathering, right? There's definitely some clear patterns and strategies that you can execute against to do well. But there's a lot of randomness to this game, especially on the exploring side, right? Like, this one guy made a lot of glory doing a temple stuff. I was exploring the same temple the game before, and all I kept getting was gold, which was helpful, but not as good as like finding these super rare relics and giving them all kinds of mad glory.
Right. Yeah, we had exactly the same.
And it's random, and you got to be okay with that. If you don't want a random game, this is not for you because there's a lot of random elements to this thing. It's not a controlled experience.
You could start up your ship to have all this upgrades so that you can explore, and then if your dice roll sucked,
right,
you will lose everything, and then you're like. It really sets you back a lot.
And you can mitigate that somewhat with the fortune tokens and stuff, but there's places you can't use them. So there's no certainty in this game. It's definitely there's luck involved. There's
right.
You can try to mitigate it the best you can. You can try to play your odds, but there's going to be sessions where you just get screwed, and that's just how it is.
And I'm as I said yesterday, I'm very intrigued because you usually don't like games with that much luck in them.
I don't.
But you're saying it's more of an adventure and you're more like on a journey.
Yeah, for me, it's the adventure and the experience. It's like, Descent. Here's and this is one of the things I wanted to talk to Tom Vassal about on the Dice Tower, because I know he's not a big fan of Seafall either, but he likes Descent. And what's interesting about Descent is I like Descent a lot too, but Descent is not a well-balanced game that has a well-balanced ending, right? Descent has got these random moments in it. There's no guarantee the Overlord's going to win at the right moments. You can get these really off-kilter finales in Descent. But it's the experience, the story you're building with Descent. It's almost like an RPG. And I know Tom likes Descent because he kind of he kind of imagines he's the dungeon master. So this game is kind of like that for me. I do want to win, and I definitely try to win each game, and I try to find patterns that'll beat my opponents as fast as possible, and they do the same to me. But at the same time, at the end of the day, I'm also really enjoying watching the story unfold in like a Descent sort of way. So that's what I like about it. But is it a awesome, crunchy, brilliantly innovative mechanic game? No, I don't think so. I don't think it's got like, you know what I mean? But is it a cool, fun experience that you can have a good campaign with your friends and remember all these crazy, funny moments when, an island got called Arrakis because half of it was covered in spice, and that at one time you sank my ship, and now you get chased by stuff that I can't mention now because I don't want to spoil it. That's cool.
No spoilers,
right?
Yep.
So that part's cool. So it's like an RPG in a way because these stories you can tell at the end of the thing, and these crazy names you got to remember. So I like that part of it. But but again, it's the experience you want to get out of it. If it's that you want, you're going to love it. If you don't, if you want a crunchier game with firmer rules and less randomization, then this is not for you. So for me,
randomization.
Yeah, that's not even a word.
Yeah.
So what I would say,
I think it is randomization.
So I'm going to go with. I'm going to say it's a 4+, a 4+, unless unless you are a fan of storytelling games, or if you're a storytelling game fan, I would give it a +1. So I'd say a storytelling person is going to like a 3+, or narrative games 3+, but a pure gamer 4+. So Craig,
one thing.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Eric, sorry.
No,
Go ahead,
one
Eric.
last thing I wanted to add was that like you mentioned, the basic game itself is pretty simple to play. There isn't anything in terms of like very innovative mechanisms and stuff like that. So I was wondering whether we are letting it get away because of the legacy part. Like, right now when we start the game, it's pretty simple. There's nothing too complex about it. It's fine. Maybe later on there'll be more and more complex things added to it. So are we letting it
maybe
slide?
So are we letting it slide? Well, here's what my friend Adam said. So I was really interested. So I actually over sushi last night, I really grilled the 4 players in our campaign. It's like, look, I'm going to be reviewing this in the show tomorrow. This is a very it gets mixed reviews. Why? And all of us like it. All of us love it. We look forward to every game. We almost played back to back last night, but unfortunately, our Adam had a Malifaux game. But one of the things he mentioned, he said, so Adam loves Merchants and Marauders, or used to love Merchants and Marauders, and for him, this is Merchants and Marauders done right. So I liked Merchants and Marauders, but Merchant Marauders did have some problems with it. The game could outstay its welcome and never really end. Also, the pirate side is harder to win with than the non-pirate side, right? Generally speaking. And some other things like that too. But Merchant Marauders has sort of the story element. There's these little, missions you get and things like that. He likes this because it's got that feeling of it, but longer range, and there's a campaign on it. So if you're an Age of Sail guy and want a campaign, it definitely captures that. So if you want that sort of feeling, it's in this game, I think. Anyway, that's his thoughts. Craig, after hearing all this, what do you think your desire to play and or purchase this game might be?
Well, I have to say I have no interest in purchasing this game. I don't have really I don't have a group that I would want to dedicate this much time to really. It seems like the theme that keeps popping up is that it's an experience, and that it's a journey. And I don't have enough time in my schedule or a group of people willing to put that much time and effort into fully realizing what looks like there's a lot of potential here, but it looks like you need to invest a lot of time and effort into discovering the potential. And even then, it's no real guarantee. So I would have to say I'm very leery of this game.
All right. What would you give your...
It seems pretty standard at the beginning. So if I wanted to just play a quick game, it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of meat to it.
Nope.
The meat is in the time and effort.
Yes.
I think. So I would have to say my interest in trying this game is somewhere in the 2 category. I mean, somewhere in the 5 category.
I was going to say 2 is really good. 5.
2, yeah, 5.
So 1 in 3 chance.
Category.
Yeah. All right. Okay. That's fair.
So, So, I mean, it just doesn't. If there was a legacy game that really captured the theme for me, I mean, I think I might eventually really enjoy a legacy game. The concept is really cool, and I do love campaigns. This, I don't think, is the one for me.
All right, there you go.
Have you played Pandemic Legacy then?
I've played regular Pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a lot. I used to.
You and Karen should play. You and Karen should play Pandemic Legacy.
I agree.
I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, you should totally.
I'm lucky to get her to the same game twice in a row.
But didn't she play Pandemic 10 times?
My achievements, I forgot. I got another game of Vikings on board with her.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
but that's highly unusual.
Well, there you have it. There's our thoughts on Seafall. So Eric,
all over the board. All over the board.
Eric, thank you so much for joining us this episode. We really appreciate having you on the show.
Yes, it's been fun.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, no, thank you. And Eric, if people want to see what you're up to, what games you're developing or anything on the internet, where can they go to find you on the intertubes?
So I'm mostly active on Twitter at DUCKIZZ or ZZ. And I've also started to make minimalistic poster design for board games. You can see that at the deviantarts.com, but you can just go to Twitter to look for me. And I also have video reviews on YouTube. So it's youtube.com/
Duckies. DUCKIZZ or ZZ.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Eric. Really appreciate it. And we hope to get to talk to you again in the near future. And I'll see you at PAX East.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Excellent.
Bye-bye,
Thanks,
Eric.
guys.
Take care.
Bye. This Did You Ever Notice is brought to you by, once again, all of the men and women who stepped up and helped us through Patreon. That's right, all of the patrons in the grand Renaissance tradition who help us keep creating this fantastic art you're experiencing right now. The use of the term art was used advisedly. Today I'd like to thank Jay Likovic, Jeremy Danielson, Jeremy Dunham, Jeremy Lynn, and Jim Callback. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you all for being part of the show. Did you ever notice how much damage you can do without even realizing it? I'm in the middle of another one of my, as I call my project comas, or my terrain comas, where I will just start working on a project, usually in the pub, much to the detriment of the pub and probably several other rooms in the house. And I just work and don't really look at much of what I'm doing. And I mean, I have spray painted my floor by accident. I have spray painted my garage by accident. I have now spray painted a tree stump that's a really nice little decorative accent in my backyard by accident, because I just get these images in my head, as I've talked about before, both on the main show and in Did You Ever Notice, where I get these ideas in my head and I just start working towards them. Working towards the Captain Con table for Captain Con, for our Conflict 47 game, has been a particularly interesting project, because Russ at the last minute, well, not at the last minute, but I mean, after we'd set everything up, his business sort of changed the terms of an event that he was going to, and now he can't come and help. So I'm looking at doing this major event where Russ provides probably about 60 to 70% of the energy and at least 50% of the rules coverage all by myself. So that in and of itself is daunting. And so I've got all these ideas in my head that I have had for a while. But on top of that, now I'm making up the army lists, which Russ was going to help with, and he helped with, but I've got, I wanted to make sure that I had all those, the handout, the cards that I used last year. So all the stats of all the guys and all the weapons. And of course, Conflict 47 is hard because there aren't really a lot of stats other than your model's, training level. So you're either trained, I'm just drawing an inexperienced or veteran. And that affects, how hard it is to hit you and your command, basically your leadership. And then movement is the same across the board for everybody, dependent upon your unit type. So if you are infantry, if you are a walker, if you are a half-track, if you are a wheeled vehicle, or if you are a tracked vehicle, you have all the same movement as everybody else in your movement category. But of course, there are other things that can affect that. And vehicles are also limited in how many 90-degree turns they can take. But then there are abilities that can affect that. And so I wanted sort of a standard template that a person who is moderately conversant with miniatures games could look at and not wonder, well, how fast does my guy move or whatever, without the briefing. So I changed it up a lot so that the units have more of a standard stat line that other gamers would be used to. That took a lot of time. But the main thing was I had this idea in my head about the terrain that I wanted, and I didn't own a bunch of the terrain. So you heard about it a little bit in achievements, where I talked about making using the latex caulking to make roads. And that was part of what I wanted to do. I wanted to have roads. But I also wanted to have I loved when we played at Adler Hobby and we played the bocage table with all of the giant hedgerows. I wanted something like that. And so I worked with Gordon, and Gordon told me everything that I needed to do to get that stuff ready in this cool, in sort of an industrial level air conditioner, air filter stuff that looks like tangled underbrush. And so I got a bunch of that stuff. I finally found it. And then I had my own ideas, of course. So I'm spray painting it brown instead of leaving it the green that it is. And so, but at the same time, I'm not paying any attention to what's going on around me. And I've got, like, I had the objective, which is a top secret objective that I'm finishing up now. I've been working on that feverishly. That took like 2 or 3 days of my hobby time. And, this week. And so I started working. The last thing, and I hadn't even started working on it yet, are these hedgerows. And I wanted 2 different heights. So there were some that you could be seen over, but then there were some that would block infantry, but not vehicles. So a vehicle could probably shoot over it, especially if it was closer to the hedgerow. But a man would have to push through the hedgerow before he could shoot, sort of to give some fire lanes and make the table more interesting for the mission that I am doing. And I had not, so yesterday was in the middle of everything else, going on in life, and basketball games and driving to and from play dates and whatnot. Here I am. I'm cutting these strips out of this relatively it's like a mat of, I don't even know what it's made out of, but it looks like a thick underbrush mat. But I'm cut. They're 2 feet wide by 3 feet long, these panels. So I'm cutting these little strips out of this, and I'm spray painting them when I get them out there. I'm not noticing that I'm spray painting the stump. And, I'm not noticing that as I'm cutting them, I'm actually abrading the flesh from the knuckle of my middle finger. And so that was my new terrain coma moment of, oh my God, I have to pay more attention to what's going on around me, because I looked down and there was just blood everywhere. So little added extra detail, I think, to the terrain for Captain Con. But very excited to be building all this cool stuff. So it should gonna have some farmhouses, gonna have a river, gonna have a bridge, gonna have some roads, the hedgerows. I'm gonna have an orange grove, which is not English at all. But whatever. It's 1947 in an alternate universe. They could have planted some oranges. I've got some other trees that I've got. I'm telling you, from China, you can get amazing model railroading trees that look way better than anything you can build yourself with the kits you get in here in America at a fraction of the price. So that was another little eye-opening moment I had. And I actually had that thanks to the guys at Firelock Games when I was trying to recreate some of the stuff that they'd used in their tables for Gen Con. And I found that the company that I got the palm trees from that they had recommended, Mike and the guys had given me the email address, which is just an eBay store. You just have to look hard. And so, I think I got 20 orange trees that are really nice size. They're not huge orange trees, but they look like a little grove of orange trees for, I think, $5. Yeah. So that was pretty amazing. So it should be a kind of an elaborate, cool looking table, and I can't wait for it. And, I'm going to have a Band-Aid because my knuckle's all bloody. And hopefully it might heal in the next 5 days. I don't know, but super looking forward to Captain Con. I can't wait to get this to the table. Rafe has stepped up. He's going to help me run it. Hoping some of the local guys will help me run through it on Tuesday so I can make sure that all the terrain works the way I want it to, and that the special rules I'm coming up with will work correctly. And, so if you're going to Captain Con, please make some time on Saturday morning, I think 11, in the main hall. They like to put us up front because they know our tables look good. And we'll be right there. And I hope to see some of you there. And I'm going to be tweeting lots of pictures, which Russ will then retweet, as his business, on the West Coast allows. And, should be another cool D6G event that I bled for. I bleed for this podcast. Anyway, I gotta stop now. That's about all I've got to say about that. So thanks for listening and good night.
Achievement unlocked. You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Teo, like
Teo?
Leo, but with a T.
Leo, but with a T. All right, that's easy to remember because it's spelled like Leo, but with a T. Perfect.
Yeah. I've been it's kind of interesting. Like people have been like Tao and Tu and stuff like that. So yeah,
There's all kinds of ways people can butcher names.
Right. You did not invent the chicken. It's not Eric Dow's chicken or General Eric Dow's chicken.
General Soul's chicken.
Yes, right. So not pronounced like that at all. Good. Just checking.
Yeah. There was a documentary about that. That's quite interesting.
Oh, really? Did a general really invent it? Because I don't know this story behind that.
Oh, I think they did a research on who actually did invent it, and I think it came from General Soul's like hometown.
Oh,
and so they thought that he liked to eat it, but it's probably not. It's more like it's so common in his hometown that people thought that he probably would have eaten it even if he really did not, because it's so common there.
So common there.
Yeah.
All right. So it may not have been his favorite, but he probably ate it at one point. All right.
Yeah, correct. At some point or other. Yeah. So they brought it over here.
You learn something new every day. I did not know you would know the answer to that question, but there you have it. See.
I think he asked it to be a wise ass.
I did, and Eric is right there with the answer. I love it.